Ready? We have, I see one attendee. Okay, so we'll go. Good evening. This is the meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District Board of Trustees. Today is Tuesday, October 13th, and the time is 6:01 p.m. We'll be recessing into closed session shortly, and after closed session, we'll return for our open session business at about 6:30 p.m. For tonight's closed session, we'll be discussing conference with labor negotiators related to PAEA and CSEA. And if you have any comments on those issues, you can virtually raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the icon or by pressing *9 if you're dialed in by phone. And we'll wait a moment just to see if there are any comments. And seeing none, we'll now adjourn to closed session and see you at 6:30. Thank you. I think we're ready to begin. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School Board of Trustees. Today is Tuesday, October 13th, and the time is 6:31. The board met earlier in closed session and took no reportable action. So first, a couple of housekeeping issues just to cover virtual meetings and our new, I guess we would call this hybrid style meeting. First, public comment. I'll talk about the way we're set up in the board meeting, but most importantly, public comment is the same as it's been recently, which is if you wish to comment an item, we'll be taking it via Zoom. And when we get to that item, I'll ask you to electronically raise your hand. You can do that either by clicking on the raise hand icon on Zoom or pressing *9 if you're calling in by phone. We started using a practice where we ask people to get their hands raised at any time after the item is called and before the first person who's commenting on the item finishes. That's important because that lets us know how many people are going to comment, which by our bylaws determines how much time each person gets. So make sure to wait for the item to be called and then raise your hand before the first person finishes speaking. And finally, since we're not all here together, we have 2 board members dialed in remotely and 3 here in the room. We'll be doing roll call votes on all items, and our board secretary, Dr. Austin, will do the honors on that. Okay, I just wanted to talk briefly about our new setup here, because this is the first time we've done a meeting this way. We are assembled here in the boardroom at 25 Churchill, and we are limited to just board members and staff per direction from the county public health department, which said we could have members from our organization, but not members of the public attending the meeting. So we have board members and staff members in the meeting. The room, for those of you who are interested, is it's a large room. If you've seen the board meeting, and yeah, we're going to take a picture of it. We've installed the same HEPA filter that is present in many of our classrooms that don't have good cross ventilation, and that is humming away in the back of the room. Thank you. And I think you've just seen a picture of it. And that is the primary filtration unit that we're using in this room for the duration of the meeting. We also obviously are socially distanced. We're all wearing masks, and we'll wear masks for the duration of the meeting. So we've gotten clear direction from the county health department about how to conduct this meeting, and as with our school operations, we're trying to adhere closely to those directions and make sure we keep everybody safe. So, okay, so that's it for the housekeeping. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Wow, with reverb. Okay, we'll take care of that.
It's been a while.
All right, Dr. Rossi, can you take the vote on that?
Yes. Ms. Atla?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza?
Aye.
Ms. Baton-Caswell?
Aye.
Mr. Dauber?
Aye.
Mr. Durop?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
I also vote aye. So we have an approved agenda, and the first item on it is item 2A, Superintendent of Schools Report. Dr. Austin.
Mine will be brief tonight. First of all, great news for the county of Santa Clara. We have moved to the orange tier. I can tell you my colleagues in Southern California have expressed their jealousy, as many are still in the purple area. But a move to orange is strong for us. Our public health department meeting that I have each week talked about some things that we might expect in the very near future. for our county, but certainly a step in the right direction. We have some amazing efforts to celebrate, and it feels like it has been a long time since we have celebrated much around here with 7+ months of being closed. Looking forward to that later in the agenda. That does not mean that we don't have tough work ahead. We have lots of hard work ahead of us. But it's just nice to take a breath and say we got a couple things under our belt at a very high level, and I really appreciate the efforts of everyone, but we'll dig deeper on that when we get to some items here in the future. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that, that uplifting and brief report. Next is student board member reports, and Mr. Lee, do you want to lead us off today?
Sure. Okay. In light of yesterday being Indigenous Peoples Day, I would like to begin my report by acknowledging that we, Palo Alto Unified, are on the ancestral land of the Muwekma Ohlone, who have stewarded this land for generations. For thousands of years prior to the arrival of the Europeans, the ancestors of the Ohlone lived, fished, and thrived on this land. Beginning in 1769, this land was stolen first by Spanish missionaries as part of Mission Santa Clara, then made into rancheros owned by wealthy Mexican landowners before being divided up into private land deeds owned by American settlers. At the same time, the Ohlone were forcefully assimilated by their population as a result of disease, rape, and forced labor. By 1830, the Ohlone population had dropped to 2,500. Today, the Muwekma Ohlone are still here. They have not disappeared. They continue to fight for their land rights and recognition. I believe it is important that their stories are heard and not kept invisible, and that is why I took the time to provide this brief history lesson. And with the racial equity resolution on our mind, I hope that we as a district can do a better job teaching the history and stories of Indigenous people, because I certainly did not learn what I just said when I was in 4th grade. But with that said, I'll now move into my report on events going on at Gunn. So first of all, we wrapped up our National Hispanic Heritage Month a couple weeks ago. We also concluded our action shot tournament, and we had 2 winners. One of them was from water polo and the other from diving. The League of Women Voters also came to talk to seniors about pre-registration and voting during Gun Together last week. And SEC is planning a Fall Spirit Hollow Week that will culminate in a drive-through trick-or-treat, and the theme reveal for that will be on Friday. Our esports club is also hosting a Super Smash Bros. Tournament that's ongoing right now. And finally, on Saturday, students held a socially distanced march and vigil in protest of Santa Clara County's decision to delay an investigation into the way schools address sexual violence. And that's it for my report.
Great, thank you. Ms. Atlow.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Lee, first of all, because I definitely learned something new from his report today. What Pally is focusing on these coming weeks is a mask competition. We have narrowed it down to 5 possibilities, and those masks will be available for purchase on the Pally ASB website. We recently also finished an ASB fishbowl where we had students, teachers, and Mr. Klein participate. We're also hosting a costume competition for Halloween, and the League of Women Voters also came to Pally to talk to our history and social science classes about registering. We are also hosting a Krispy Kreme fundraiser. Sports teams are also allowed to play with more equipment. Viking Week, which is our take on an online Spirit Week, will be held November 2nd to 6th. Band and choir have concerts coming up soon. Senior portraits and baby ads and senior quotes are also due this week. And we also had a coordinated wellness week with Gun. And we sent out our first Pally ASB newsletter to the entire school district. The school, not the district. And we are planning on getting small cohorts of students back on campus. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. All right, the next item on our agenda is 3A, open forum. Anyone wishing to address the board on non-agendized items may do so at this time, and we encourage you, if you like, to send written comments to us at board@pausd.org. And you can do that whether you speak in open forum or run out of time, or just want to send information to the board. Let's see how many speakers we have. Now would be the time to raise your hand if you want to speak for open forum. And just seeing a couple. Oh no, here are a couple more. All right, just seeing a small number. It'll be 3 minutes each. And the first speaker will be Kathy, followed by Meb Steiner, followed by Star Teachout.
Thank you, Mr. Collins, for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to talk about an item that is not on the agenda, not an agendized item, which is enrollment. In the past, the enrollment report has always been an agendized item, but I note that it is not. I also note that Los Altos School District, which started 2 days after Palo Alto Unified, reported their 14th day enrollment on September 10th. Yet Palo Alto Unified took more than a month beyond Los Altos School District to report its enrollment for this school year. As you all know, the reported enrollment is that Palo Alto Unified is down 8% in terms of its enrollment for this school year. I also wanted to note that the enrollment report as of last year comprised 3 different files totaling 20 pages. Yet this year, with the bad news of an 8% decline, there is 1 page total detailing the enrollment in Palo Alto Unified. Being down 8% in enrollment, of course, calls into question the need for a parcel tax that represents 6%, 5.8% of annual budget revenues, expenses, when you have lost 8% of your student enrollment. Though nobody can predict what enrollment will be after this year, no one was able to predict either when parcel taxes were enacted in the past for future school years. So I wanted to note all of those points, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next is Meb Steiner, followed by Star Teachout, and then the last speaker will be R. Ellis.
Good evening. Meb Steiner speaking as a community member, but also as CSEA president. The first thing I want to just touch upon is just our civic responsibility to vote. We are voting, and I just want to encourage everyone to vote and remember that they can register same day and cast a ballot. So if you've been procrastinating, you can still do it. And I'm especially excited for all of our high school students who are turning 18 and can participate in their first voting experience at the national and state and local level. The other thing that I want to speak up in support of is our parcel tax measure. It is such a critical measure for our schools. And I, again, want to express my appreciation for our community that has been so generous in the past. And I just have great faith and optimism that our community will continue to support our public schools. As I've said many times, I've been a part of this school district since I was 7 years old. And just FYI, I will be turning 60 on Saturday. So lot to celebrate and a lot of wonderful things. I know that, you know, Ms. Jordan just spoke about the enrollment numbers. It's not always only about numbers. It's about our ability to continue providing amazing programs, giving us a chance to expand some of the ideas that we have to support our students, to bridge divides of whatever kind, to expand curriculum that is engaging and reflective of the diversity of our community, of having excellent teachers and support staff, and providing all of the amazing things we do in our schools. More opportunities for our kids to have extracurriculars, our CTE program that we're expanding. So there's just so many wonderful, wonderful things that we can do with the continued support of our community. And I just want to once again speak up in support of Measure O and of having the parcel tax pass, and just endorse that as full-throatedly as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Star Teachout, and then the last speaker is R. Ellis.
Good evening. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I hope you're well. I just briefly looked over the MOU. I didn't go into the details of it. And I don't know if there's something that would have to be detailed in an MOU, but I want you to consider, well, firstly, asking the teachers what their needs are but to consider whether there is any budget at all to provide a little bit of IT support for teachers. Should we have our half in person, half hybrid, half at home hybrid model? If you can imagine what would happen when you're trying to take attendance with the in-person students while you have the students at home and you're trying to check them in. If there's a breakout room situation where you're sorting people, and of course, a lot of kids get bumped out of their breakout rooms or they're not able to get in at all. Just the quality of the instruction could be so much improved if our teachers had a little bit of help with that process. Should they be dividing their time between the students in class and the students at home? I know you haven't revealed what that reopening plan is in detail, but just wondered if you could consider asking the teachers what they need with respect to that in-class attendance management of Zoom and attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker is R. Ellis. Mr. and Ms. Ellis, are you there? Okay, so I guess we lost Mr. and Ms. Ellis. Is that a technical problem, Derek, or? No? Okay. All right, so that is it for open forum for tonight. And again, if you want to send comments, you can to board@pausd.org. Okay, the next item is our consent calendar. And let me read my little blurb here. These items are considered routine and will be approved in one action without discussion. If a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent item, or if a board member would like to pull an item, we'll consider it under action items. And so, can I get a motion on consent?
So moved.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I would like to make a change to pull an item.
Before we do that, why don't we get a second, and then we can pull items after we have the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Ms. DeBrienza, seconded by Mr. Durrop. Okay, Ms. Bain-Caswell, speak up just a little bit so we can hear you and get your.
Item D. I'd like to pull that.
B as in boy?
D as in David.
D as in David, okay. And just to confirm, that's approval of the minutes for September 29th? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other items to be pulled or, no? Okay, so in that case, Dr. Rossin, can we take the vote on the consent calendar?
Yes, Mr. Lee,
Aye.
Ms. Atla,
Aye.
Ms. DeBrienza,
Aye.
Ms. Baden-Caswell,
Aye.
Mr. Dauber,
Aye.
Mr. Drop,
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye. So the consent calendar is approved with the exception of item D, which we'll take up immediately. And Ms. Baden-Caswell, do you want to speak to item D?
Yeah, I would. In the minutes, amendment number 3 for motion number 2. I think we didn't do a great job capturing in the motion what we had said. And, I can blame myself because I don't think I restated it. Obviously, we can't change it now, but going forward, I think it would be a really good idea to make sure that the person that made the motion approves the written version of it.
Well, usually what we do, so that seems like a good suggestion. Usually what we try to do, and I think you mentioned it, it's a good idea to, after we have a discussion, to restate what everybody's voting on and state it clearly at the meeting so that, the written record reflect what got said, so there's no confusion about. So you're okay with moving ahead with the minutes as they are? Or do you think we need to have them reviewed?
I think we should review how it was said, and we should bring them back with
Okay.
what the motion
So why don't we
was.
do that? And Vicki, can you take the initiative to review the video on that, and we'll bring back September 29th at the
Thank
next
you.
meeting. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Caswell, Ms. Baden-Caswell. Okay, the next item is item 5A, COVID testing agreement with Stanford Healthcare. Dr. Austin.
Yes, before I turn this over to Ms. Conway, just a couple things for some additional context. So I'd stated earlier, I am the AXA rep for the governor's state working group on testing, and I did have a standalone meeting today to clarify what I am allowed to share at this point. So I do have a few things I'd like to share that are pretty important, actually, as we look at statewide testing for our profession and education. Something that's pretty universally held in the working group, and the working group, just quickly, is one kind of K-12 administrator, that's me, and then we have people from the industry, so from the Department of Public Health, from CDE, so the State Department has several people involved. We have a county superintendent, we have a CTA rep from Los Angeles Unified, we have board members from representing CSBA. So it's representative of the major stakeholders. We have a CSEA representative, but each has their own lens to look through, but there are some places where we're all totally on the same page. Quickly, number one is nobody wants schools to turn into health facilities. We're not health professionals by trade, and we do not want to take on the roles of being health professionals as a whole. Okay, so there are some places, as we talk about COVID testing in general, that there's some handling of test and some assistance in administering tests, and some of the tests are even self-administered. But we don't want to be turning into essentially a lab that's doing every part of the work. So that's universally held. Next, the smallest number of people handling, touching the test from arrival to getting a result, the better. And we all agree on that. So we're looking for mechanisms to make that process smoother. By the way, the first in-person meeting back is kind of weird. I don't know about you guys. I'm looking at my computer screen like I'm talking on a Zoom screen. That's how quickly we become conditioned to be something other than what we're used to. That's for another topic. The biggest takeaway, however, was a comment that was made that was almost an aside, but really caught my attention, and I followed back up on this in every format possible. COVID testing is free for school employees, meaning no copay, no nothing. Your insurance is going to pick it up. Let me add to that, nothing is free. So what free means in this case is that your healthcare provider picks up that cost, which we had all kind of missed the obvious loop, will be passed back to school districts next year with a change in your insurance experience, which will negatively impact premiums. That's huge for school districts, huge.
By negatively impacting, you mean raise premiums?
By negatively impacting, I mean our premiums will go up. Our premiums go up like everyone else anyway. But now we are potentially in a place where let's say we go forward and we do every 2 weeks, and the number of employees grows as students return, and we add more employees back into this as we go. And that's kind of more for a future topic. There are people in there that would typically have little to no experience with insurance and now may have a twice a month expense attached in. I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to be tested. These are totally separate. I'm talking about the finances and a hit that is coming our direction absent intervention at another level. So when you look for what is probably my top lobbying point going back on behalf of AXA, and in this case, our district as well, is going to be some mechanism for relief for premium increases heading into next year as a result of doing what we're asked to do, which is the testing. So I just wanted to put that on the radar before we head in here. The Stanford We feel good about, I can tell you this last comment from the working group before I turn this over to Ms. Conway. I don't think there's anything that's evolving as quickly as testing mechanisms, turnaround times, ease. I think the idea that you had to have an appointment at one point in time and have a swab go pretty deep up there is going to be something people laugh about not very far in the future. It is already going to saliva test, quicker results. 72 hours is now a long time to wait for a test when there was a point in time when that was super fast. So nothing is evolving faster than this area right now, and it is very likely that we could start with Stanford and end with something that doesn't even exist yet. And I just want to make sure we're all comfortable with this. We are not entering into a lifetime agreement with Stanford, and Stanford knows that. And they very well may evolve as this goes. In fact, if anyone should, I would imagine it would be Stanford. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. You've likely read the contract already, so I won't go into the specific details of the contract. But I will say that pending the review and approval tonight, that the objective is to get started on that contract on October the 15th with our first testing event on October the 21st. We are working with Stanford right now to schedule our testing event. We have our location site in place. We are right now working out the specific details and logistics, which, as you can imagine, have some pitfalls here and there that we're trying to work through. So hopefully we will be able to get as many folks in our first two testing events, particularly those who are in-person learning, and then have an opportunity to offer that to staff members who would like to get tested even if they're not in a testing event. The advantage of this obviously is that Stanford is a high quality partner to partner with just about anything as it relates to health. So we are at an advantage, more so than many districts, that we are partnering with a local company, and we're also partnering with a partner that we know very well and we already have an established relationship with. So we are looking forward to moving forward in this first interim with that group and getting as many folks tested as we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Conway. Okay, now's the time for public comment. If anybody wants to comment on this issue, you should raise your hand. And my public comment monitoring device has kind of gotten a little hard to read. Okay, so it looks like we have just one hand up, and it is CSEA President Meb Steiner. Go ahead, Ms. Steiner.
Good evening. Thank you. Meb Steiner, President of CSEA Chapter 301. I'm just kind of weighing in here on a couple things. Yes, I agree with Dr. Austin. We have sort of the two things, and I really appreciate his pointing out the health insurance financial side of it as well. Testing is really important. We know that from a public health standpoint. It's also important, I think, for many of our employees, our students, and our families to feel more comfortable about in-person return. So that's a critical piece as well. Stanford as a partner, of course, is an amazing partner, great healthcare system, and will probably be on the cutting edge. I do want to touch upon the possible increase in insurance premiums. It does come about because the trend and the direction of premium increases is based on utilization. And if our utilization increases, then that will have some impact. Again, as Dr. Austin pointed out, that may be something that needs to be handled at a higher level to try to avoid that for school districts. I do want to point out, because it's actually quite timely, we just finished our joint benefits committee, and we will be tentatively agreeing and ratifying our benefits portion and then doing our open enrollment for the 2021 school year. One of the things that has been just crazy over the last decade and more, in fact, is the fact that healthcare premiums have been increasing, far outpacing any salary increases. And what we used to have in our district was anyone who was healthcare eligible for healthcare used to have 100% benefits. That was a long time ago. It then became prorated for part-time employees. And then the grandfathered folks were also removed as of 2008. So well over a decade now, we've just seen staggering increases in healthcare costs. And the burden is sort of shifted more and more towards employees. This particularly impacts our part-time employees because they pay a prorated portion of the premiums from very small salaries. And on top of that, if they have a dependent plan, they pay an employee contribution of that as well. And I'm happy to send details about the numbers, but staff also has those as we share those numbers in joint benefits. But this is definitely an area of major concern for all of us and for employee wellness and wellness of all of us in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board member comments and questions. And if you're in the room, you can just raise your hand and I'll try to monitor the computer-based monitor as well to see if any board members there. Anybody here? Anybody here? All right, I have just a couple of quick comments. Oh, Melissa. Yeah, if you're remote, Melissa and Ken, if you could use the Zoom raise hand because it's easy, that's the one I'm looking at. I don't always look up at the monitor where you are, but go ahead, Ms. Bacon-Caswell.
I would just want to say how easy it is to get tested and how important it is for our community to realize that this is something we're doing to protect everybody. And so I'm going to encourage all of our employees to take advantage of this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll just add on that because we were talking about this walking down the hallway, how I think 3 of the board members got tested last Friday, and it was in and out in just a matter of minutes at the Palo Alto Arts Center, which is a great testing facility. And if you haven't gotten tested, I encourage you to do so because it is, as Dr. Austin was saying, we're going to laugh about, the sinus tickling approach and that we used in the past, and now the mid-nasal approach seems to be, and I think I've heard a lot of saliva-based approaches coming up that apparently are going to be much faster and completely effortless. The 2 things I just wanted to mention is, and they're not really questions, just acknowledgement of these issues. One is student testing, where we, our relationship with Stanford doesn't extend to student testing. We are encouraging students to get tested, families to get tested, but we're not providing a mechanism for that at this point or requiring it. I think it would be nice, and I know we've been working on identifying ways to facilitate students and families to get tested. And is that something that we're still working on, Ms. Conaway?
Absolutely. Every opportunity we get, particularly with the outreach that we're doing to specific families, we're encouraging that and making sure that they know where to go to get tested as well.
Great. And the other is just to circle back on the financial impact that Dr. Austin said. I just want to clarify, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but you were not saying that because of the potential deferred financial impact, that this is something that we should hesitate to do or not proceed with, right?
No, the contrary is, I think it's important enough that this is a primary focus area for me and for AXA and for others to look for a way to mitigate those negative impacts through the state so that we can all realize the positive impacts of the testing.
Great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think this is something we have to go ahead with. This is essential for safety of our students and our staff and our community. But it is a burden that school districts are not funded to handle. And to the extent that you can make that clear to the people who hold the purse strings in Sacramento, I think that would be a service to us and every other school district in California. Okay, this item is for action, right?
Correct.
So having this discussion, do we have any, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the COVID testing agreement with Stanford Healthcare.
Second.
All right. If there's no further comment, Dr. Austin, could you take the vote?
Certainly. Ms. Atla?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Ms. DiBrienza?
Aye.
Ms. Baton-Caswell?
Aye.
Mr. Dauber?
Aye.
Mr. Durop?
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
I also vote aye, so unanimously approved. Thank you, Ms. Conaway, and thank you, Dr. Austin. I know it's not been easy to get this in place, and so I'm thrilled that we have an agreement in place. Okay, item 6A. Now, that's all the action that's going to be taken tonight unless we waive the two-meeting rule. The next items are for discussion, and the first discussion item is COVID-19 update. Dr. Austin.
I have this. This item has quite a few parts to it, so I'm actually going to walk through the agenda within the agenda to kind of give everyone an idea of the sequencing. But first of all, just a repeat of good news. We are in the orange category now. We have roughly
Actually, starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow, thank you. We have been notified we're in the orange. We have roughly 700 students already back through our TK through 1, and we'll go through some of those numbers in just a minute. And it's been really nice to hear some things, and I think that's where I'm going to spend just a few seconds. I was able to meet with Ms. Hendricks on the first day of school at Palo Verde, and went out and saw a line of parents with their kids out on the back street, backside street. And one of the first things I heard were very quick thank yous. And this sounds really silly, but it's been a long time since we've heard a group of thank yous. It has been hard, and I got to receive them on behalf of everyone who put in so much work. Because, when you're my size, the mask doesn't hide who you are. So they figured it out. But it was really nice. It was nice, and to see the looks in their eyes and see little kids standing with their parents waiting for their first day. And later in the day, here's the next thing I got to hear. I'm just going to talk about things we heard. I heard the staff at Palo Verde, the teachers and the principal and the office staff, greeting kids, going out of their way, almost like the first time you meet, somebody, a little kid, and you're like, it's okay, I'm not scary. They took that extra time to say, I've got a mask on, and we haven't met yet physically face to face, but I'm safe. And to watch the kids just embrace so quickly. I can't tell you how many parents told me there on the spot and then later through email from other schools that their kids didn't cry. I thought that was a really interesting observation. Typically, the first day of school, little kids cry. They didn't cry. I'm sure some kid cried, but most kids did not cry that day. They embraced and jumped in, and I think part of it is because of the superstar extra efforts these people put into meeting them the night before, reading them a story, greeting them at the door. You walk in, everything, our rooms look perfect. Everything is out. The teachers work so hard to make it inviting. Then later in the day, I took out another new employee, and we went over to Ohlone, and we pulled up in the front parking lot, and the kindergarten kids were outside playing. And we got to hear little kids laughing. And wow, that was just flat out emotional, because we have been silent for too long. So, was it a good day? No, it's probably my favorite day of my entire career. It's what we're supposed to do. So for our agenda to walk through here, before I have to pull my mask over my face, we're going to start with Meb Steiner from CSCA, which will be followed by Terry Baldwin. Terry's going to be followed by Carolyn, who's going to walk us through safety protocols and some things that are going to be really fun to look at. Carolyn will be followed by Karen Hendricks to talk about staffing, who will be followed by Lana Conaway, talk about PAUSD Plus and some great news about meals programs, to be followed by Sharon Ofek to talk about special education small groups and some elementary hybrid and distance learning enrollment numbers, to be followed by Ann Brown, who's going to frame up some really exciting stuff and how we get to where we get. Then we're going to hear from two principals, Leslie Crane, Iris Wong, And then we're going to hear from Kathy Lawrence about athletics and extracurriculars. I'll finish the whole thing up. That sounds like about a 2-hour presentation. It's about 20 minutes, okay? We practice. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over, and Meb and Terry are each going to have 5 minutes. Their timer will come up, and they'll get us started.
And just to clarify for the audience, so the structure of the item, that's the structure of the staff report.
Yes.
The whole item will be, we'll do that, then there'll be the opportunity for public comment. So, you know, wait for those. If you have a public comment on something that was said during the staff report, just remember to raise your hand when we get toward the end, and you'll have a chance to comment at the end of that. And after that, we'll do board member questions and comments. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Meb Steiner, President of CSEA. I too would like to start, with the positive. As I said at our last board meeting, we all want to reopen, and we want to do it safely. And I also want to thank all the folks who've been involved in the incredible amount of work that has gone in so far. And we still have a lot of work to do as we go back and we find, issues or problems or positives. How do we, account for those and make sure that we continue to be safe, remain vigilant, make sure that we're doing all of our safety protocols so that we don't just open and then close, but that we remain open. So I know someone shared a story of seeing a little kindergartner going on her pink bike and her dad carrying the flower backpack. And that's what we all want. And I just want to emphasize how important that is for our teachers and our staff. I mean, that's what we do. It's why we're here. It is for the kids. I do, however, want to continue to emphasize that we need to iterate. So I want to start with a positive. I was really appreciative of the tracking chart that is now on our website about the number of cases. And we will probably need to iterate as we go along. It would be very helpful if we could have the sites where it happened, should one have been there on a given date, and then can follow up. I also want us to track the cases that happen at our child care provider places. Right now, I believe the county is taking care of that. But as we bring our students back, I think it's very important that we track those as well, because our employees use those services and our students use those services of childcare. So we will be intermingled, and they're on our campuses, so they should be following our protocols, same as the FedEx guy or the UPS guy who comes to drop off packages. So I feel that would be a really critical piece. I also want to, want to celebrate that we have not had any outbreaks. We have had exposures. We have had positive cases. So I just want to remind us of that and keep us grounded that, we're not like out of the woods. So we cannot relax. We need to remain vigilant and cautiously optimistic. I also would like to touch upon the use of our staff. A lot of our folks are working remotely. It's really important that we protect our vulnerable employees, because not only does it protect them, but with their increase of COVID risk, that would impact our students and our families as well. So I really urge us to think of creative ways to utilize our staff remotely, supporting PAUSD Plus, or adding to our safes, or helping our IT team with something as simple as wiping down laptops before we send them back out to families. So trying to be more creative in how we utilize our staff and maximize them, and so that we can hang on to them. The choice should not be return in person or take an emergency leave or an unpaid leave or resign or retire. We will need all of these amazing people, many of whom have been in the district for a very long time. And we really don't want to have people choose between economic security and health and safety. So we really need to think creatively about how we can support that and allow for people to be taking time off if they're exposed or test positive or get sick, so that they stay home and can do that and still be economically secure. I want to end tonight with a real wonderful presentation that we received today. I believe Pally and Gunn had organized it. It's about our employee assistance program. And that presentation laid out all of the different services that are available through that, not only counseling, but also legal services or financial services and some other concierge type services. And that has been recorded and will be available through HR and the employee portal. So that was a really nice presentation to get to see the many supports that we have available for our employees. And I hope we continue to support all of us. Thank you.
You want to call on Ms. Baldwin?
Yeah, I'll introduce PAEA President Terry Baldwin.
Hi, thank you. Terry Baldwin, PAEA President. I just want to say yes, that of course our teachers would greet our students enthusiastically. They would put on a brave face. They're teachers and that is what they do. They are amazing professionals, you know, and I really want to be optimistic as well. But I do have to give the teacher perspective and their concerns. You know, many of their concerns that have come up weeks ago that we asked about, and we were told that they would be worked out, are the site issues. They are site issues at almost every site. So they are district issues and they have to be addressed and planned for and should have been before we opened. We asked about lunch and recess duty and coverage, and teachers are not getting any bio breaks. They're on recess duty all day, all the time, every day. Their lunches are getting cut because there's no coverage. And, you know, if no one shows up for lunch duty for them, they're not just going to leave their students. Again, they're professionals and they love their class, their students, their job. They will always go above and beyond. And they went above and beyond to create classes so that students had minimal change. But some of them are teaching both models. They're teaching hybrid in the morning in kindergarten and full distance in the afternoon, which is something they were told they weren't going to have to do. Kindergarten teachers are actually putting in more instructional minutes than any other teachers because they weren't going to have any asynchronous learning, you know, learning lessons to plan. And now they do. They have to do both and are teaching more instructional minutes. It's just a lot to ask of our teachers. Also, some of the concerns that have come up in just the past 2 days, that our bathrooms have push button sinks that turn the water on. The water runs from 4 to 11 seconds depending on the sink. That means each child must re-push the button anywhere from 2 to 4 times to have the water run correctly for the amount of time they need to wash their hands for 20 seconds, thus kind of negating the cleaning they are doing. The water comes out in dribbles and some it flows fine. It just depends again on the sink. After they wash their hands, or so-called wash their hands, they have to push a button on an air blow dryer to dry their hands. We had asked that those all be disconnected so that they weren't blowing the virus around in a small space and that paper towels be placed in. There's not enough staff to monitor bathrooms at recess or during the day to guarantee there aren't multiple kids in the bathrooms. Already, it's common for 4 to 6 kids to be found in there without supervision. Blow drying their hands, talking, chatting, blow drying their hair, I've heard, things like that. And they're kids, so no one's in there reinforcing the protocols like we had asked. And we were told that each school would have protocols for this. We already have had subs not, you know, be called in to in-room classes. And I get that in one case, the sub finder didn't know the teacher was in person, so just set up a Zoom sub. Well, that didn't help the kids that were in person, and they were brought to a classroom that was not prepared for in-person, so they could be next to a teacher that would be their teacher of record, the certificated staff of record for the day. Well, that's not their teacher and they can't cross cohorts. So there's just all of these things that we have been asking about that are falling through the cracks and that need to be done. And some of them are safety. You know, the desk shields the kids got are kind of flimsy and poor quality. I've been told that they reflect too much. They distort the kids' vision when they look through them. They can't see the smart board very well, especially with all the windows open because it's bright. But the main thing is it's distorting their vision. You know, I just feel that because we have asked our teachers to go above and beyond, and they have, and they always will, I just am afraid that the morale is going to get even worse and our mental health of our professionals is not going to be considered, and it needs to be. You know, there's just a lot of other little things that came up, but those were the big ones that are safety issues that we really need to look at and we need to fix before we move forward and before we bring another cohort on. I get they're going to show up tomorrow even when they're upset about some of these things, and they will put on a smile and they are going to be the best teachers they can be because that's what they do and they are amazing. And so we do hope this gets better and that we all stay safe. Thank you.
All right, before I turn it over to Ms. Chow, I'd like to thank Ms. Baldwin for walking a couple campuses with me. It was really nice to get out together and talk to teachers and see the preparation that went into setting up the rooms and to hear from our teachers together, their excitement for students. That was really appreciated. So Ms. Chow, why don't you take us through the next section, please?
Sure, happy to do that. Dr. Austin had shared with us some of the things that he had heard, some of the amazing things, and I thought, well, let's walk through some of the safety protocols that are equally amazing through a more visual aspect. So I thought I would start off with an overview of the commercial grade HEPA filter units. This is the second semi that arrived. Here we see they're being unloaded, uncrated, and assembled and delivered to the sites. And as you can see, they're very well received by staff. We also did quite a bit of work around enhancing our filtration and ventilation measures at the sites. So this was work around our existing HVAC units. So we had classroom air testing in the classrooms. Our HVAC filters were replaced. And outside of the classrooms, we put a classroom certification checklist to show that those classrooms had indeed been checked. Now we have a couple classroom checklists or certifications. The one on the left is the overall classroom checklist, and it verifies the PPE, the room ventilation, as well as indications that the classroom has the proper notifications for COVID. The next two certifications represent our ventilation checklist, and there's two outcomes here. So classroom represented by the middle checklist is a classroom that has had their filter checked and replaced with MERV 13 filter, and that the air ventilation in that classroom exceeds the code requirements. So when we see the box that says NA on the right side, that means that that classroom meets the air ventilation and does not need an air purification unit. The check mark on the right represents a classroom that may not have a mechanical air unit, so there's no filtration there. And the ventilation may not meet the code or may not have enough windows. So in a classroom that would not pass on those two counts, we would place an air purification unit there. So either way, it's a win for our classrooms because they are either serviced by our HVAC units or they are getting a HEPA air purification unit. Our hand washing options come in two different formats, if you will. The classrooms that have sinks inside do have There's a picture there, and you can see that there are the hand washing instructions posted front and center. So as you're washing your hands, you can have a constant reminder of the proper method for how to do that in the amount of time which you should be rubbing your hands together. The next two photos show the unpacking and delivery of our hand washing stations. These are our portable hand washing stations. They are placed outside of classrooms that do not have sinks in the classrooms. We also have U-shaped plastic desktop protectors. These are a couple different pictures of how they are utilized at the classrooms. The first one shows us a picture on a single student desk. The next one is a couple of the protectors at a kidney-shaped table where a teacher may choose to be doing some small group instruction with the safety protocols in place. And then the picture on the right shows the desk protection at a desk-style desk. And the yellow marking on the floor shows that there is proper spacing around there. And the white unit you see against the wall is one of the air purification units that is in that classroom. Social distance markings and spacings have been placed inside the classrooms so that students are spaced in safe distance from each other as well as from the adults in the classroom. And it can range from the yellow circles on the floor that have a 6 marked on them to remind folks 6 feet is the distance that we are achieving. Or it could be something where the classroom is physically marked out in blocks with the blue masking tape. We also have social distance markers in other areas throughout the sites. So on the left, we see a picture of the staff area. That's one of the mail rooms to remind not just the students, but the adults to constantly be focused on social distancing. We've also placed directional markers for traffic flow so that we are not having two-way traffic on areas that may have a narrow hallway. And then our common areas are also space for social distancing as well, such as the library. As far as our COVID notifications, those are placed throughout the campuses as well. The first picture is one of the exterior hallways, and that is the notification placed outside, reminders to wear a mask and to socially distance 6 feet apart. The middle picture is the school office, and you see a whole assortment of notifications there. One I can even see from this distance is the check mark for the ventilation, and that has been checked as well. And then on the lunch table, those areas have been marked for spacing for lunch so that students can enjoy lunch and remain socially distanced as well. And that is it.
Thank
and
you.
I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. So from the Human Resources Office, a couple of points that are important. So in certificated staff, we are fully staffed, which is great news. Our classified staff, we continue to work with and adjust. One of the things I wanted to mention, referring back to some previous comments, are that there are additional leave provisions related to COVID-19, 5 different options for employees through FFCRA if there's exposure or positive testing, employees who are ill or need time for family or child care. We're working closely with employees to take a look at their situations, work interactive processes as we need to, and we've utilized and maximized opportunities for assignments for staff to all extent possible. There is a time when we need the people on the site doing the services that our students require. Our largest challenge for that has been around student attendance and instructional aids. Latest count was we had 19 vacancies in those specific areas in the classified office. We did have 15 interviews on Monday, and we're reference checking 10 employees. 2 of them have already started. We've also been working with outside providers, 2 different providers in particular, where we have 18 who have cleared fingerprintings and 6 who have started. So the processes are going both through our internal processes and also through external providers, which has been important. We felt that we needed to keep reaching out to make sure that our students had the adults in place that that they need to have there. We have a couple of other important positions posted and classified, including the 4 elementary health technicians. And so we'll work on an update on that as soon as we take a look at the pool of candidates. We're excited to get them onto our elementary school campuses. In certificated also, I think, you know, really some important things to note are around our special education teachers, including those who returned on September 28th, and those who are still in distance learning, but the services they're providing and the positive feedback we're getting. For our K-1 teachers, we currently have 35 out of 70 teachers who are teaching in person. Rest are currently in distance teaching positions. And thus far, we've only had to relocate 2 teachers to a different school site in order to accommodate student needs. So we're prepared to thoughtfully roll out grades 2, 3, and 4, 5 staffing, and we'll also be taking a deeper look at staffing the secondary level for those students when they return in person. We'll say it's been a challenging time in terms of securing substitutes and also contract service providers. So HR staff is continuing to try to work on deepening resources for those reasons. And I think that I am going to turn it over to Ms. Conway now.
Thank you, Karen. This particular part of the item serves as both an update to PAUSD Plus as well as a summary of a critical analysis that was conducted to assess the merits of the program as we move forward and try to find ways to both expand and sustain the program as we move into hybrid learning. The basic goals of the program, if you'll remember, is to provide a quiet space, increase engagement and attendance, and to remove barriers related to connectivity. So we assessed the program under 4 critical areas. Did the program have an impact? Are there any potential improvements that are necessary for the program to be effective? Is the program sustainable? And what are the specific success indicators that we're going to be looking at to make a determination on whether we actually met the goals? So I won't, in the interest of time, I won't go through every single element, but I will tell you as we look at the data, it was very clear for us that attendance increased significantly for those students who participated in the program. So you'll see a data chart that lists close to a 77%, as high as an 87% decrease in attendance absences as it relates to PAUSD Plus implementation. So we could safely say that those students who were struggling to attend school during COVID-19 and distance learning actually improved after they were able to enroll in the program. And I'm sorry, I can't even breathe in this particular mess, so I'm struggling a bit. So one of the things we also looked at was, is this a program that we can potentially sustain as we move into hybrid learning? And it was very clear that there were some barriers, particularly as it relates to staffing. As all of our teachers and all of our staff got back to their regular duties, it would make it pretty challenging for us to continue, although there have been sites and principals who figured out some creative ways to keep the program going as we moved into hybrid learning. Obviously, elementary school has one right now, Addison. We still have a couple of elementary schools who are exploring the option to expand because there is a concern that even though students are coming back partially, that those days that they are not on site, they would still need some support. So we are looking forward to seeing what plans our principals come up with as it relates to that. We also wanted to assess what parents thought about the program and what our teachers thought about the program. So you will see a couple of statements related to the success indicators that teachers are saying. There are some students that I really struggled with who never really attended. After they enrolled in PAUSD Plus, we did see an improvement. We also saw that parents were grateful to get kids out of the house. So we heard a lot of positive feedback from those parents that Students were more engaged. Now, it's not necessarily a fun opportunity for kids. It is a space where it's quiet. There's not a lot of social engagement. So one of the challenges that we were trying to assess is how do we create an environment that's more attractive for kids to actually attend. So while there are some pros and cons of the program, we do feel like overall it met the 3 goals that we had hoped to achieve, which was engagement and a quiet place to learn, as well as some increase in motivation to engage in the classes. And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. I will share a little bit about special education. So at the, it is on. Can you all hear? Not really. The green light is on.
The masks interact with them, so you might want to pull your.
All right. Maybe I have the bad mic.
And Ms. Brown is offering her mic, generously offering her mic.
Thank you. Is this better?
It is.
Oh, I can actually hear myself. Great. Okay, so special education has returned at the elementary level. We started phasing in students from mod severe programs about 2 weeks prior to the return on October 12th. We phased in across all the whole district, starting with 3 or 4 sites each week. So we are getting to having a complete return at some point in the next couple weeks at all of our sites. The student needs in regards to the mild and moderate students having their IEPs met are being managed as we phase in the hybrid students as well. So the special ed elementary team is working with the site principals to make sure the students who are returning hybrid and or staying FDL get their services and their needs met based on the program choice that they're making, which is roughly mirroring the same percentage as gen ed students. At the secondary level, we have all of our futures programs back at JLS, Fletcher, Gunn, and Pally. And we have our therapeutic support program returning on October 19th. That will be housed at Green. So once those futures programs were up and running, we shifted our attention and focus into bringing back our another program. And I think there's also some conversations with the special education team at the secondary level around supporting through PAUSD plus or some similar programs, students who might not be in the mod severe world of services, but who are requiring some additional support, and how can we provide those to them. So the secondary special education team is working with site principals to brainstorm that and plan what that might look like. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm going to talk about the TK, kinder, and first grade return. We have 72 students who chose full year distance learning in those grades back in August, which left 1,275 students. Of those students, 700 or 54.9% chose hybrid. So we have a really nice split between hybrid and distance learning. Before I send this over to Anne, who's going to talk a little bit about how we take those 700 or all those 1,200 plus students and make classes out of them, and teachers and assignments and all that. I just want to mention Parent Square, which is a new tool we have on board for the return yesterday, which is a way for all of our parents to complete the health screener questionnaire ahead of time and submit it. And so site staffs have access to that information as students arrive on campus, and it's all digital and it's all electronic, and it's really been helpful in terms of streamlining the entrance onto campus for students. So anyway, that's my piece.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sofek. So one of the things Ms. Sofek just said is that the groups were.
You sound so good, you sound so clear.
Oh, I thank you. It's the paper mask, I think, that makes a difference. So she said it was a nice split. And that was true, but the job of forming blended class cohorts of students, of doing hybrid and full distance learning is surprisingly a very complicated task. The process took a few days of working through multiple details to get the best possible results for our students. Students who chose hybrid or full distance learning, they don't come in nice little packages of 20. So we had to take care in how we were forming these groups. So the first, and this is mostly for the hybrid, the first step was to have principals spend the entire day working with the parent selection data to determine the number of cohorts needed for both distance learning and hybrid groups of students. In a few instances, schools had to combine groups of full distance students to form one class from 2 sites. But at the end of the day, when we were looking at the Young 5 TK in first grade, we were able to keep 98% of those students at their home school, which was a huge task. But that wasn't the end of the process. Then the principals spend the next day or two working with their teachers to determine who's going to teach which class, who's going to do hybrid, who's going to do full distance. Can somebody do hybrid in the morning and full distance in the afternoon? There's lots of different conversations. And then the teachers and principals had to assign the hybrid students to classrooms and into cohorts A and B. The heterogeneous hybrid cohort formation included taking a lot of things into consideration, including making sure siblings are in the same cohort. The bus riders, we had to split them in 2 so that transportation could get all students back and forth to school in a timely fashion. Also, students receiving specialized services were assigned to certain cohorts to maximize the time of the specialists working with the students. And as always, students, when we form classes, we're looking at students' SEL needs and their academic needs. Then the school secretaries have to put everything into IC, and then the principals send out notifications of what to parents. Now, it's a 2-week time period in which we find out, actually it's only 1 week, we find out what the choice is, we meet the next day, start forming this process. So we have, we finished obviously the TK1, and today we started the process with 2-3, and in 2 weeks we'll start the process with 4-5. So it's an ongoing process, lots of work, lots of people collaborating together and coming up with the best solutions we can for students. So now I'd like to introduce Iris Wong, the principal of Fair Meadow School. She's going to share some of the highlights from yesterday's first day of hybrid learning. Iris?
Hello, you guys can hear me. Okay, hi, I'm from Fair Meadow and I'm here to, I was thinking about what can I share, and I categorized my mini presentation into 3 buckets. I do want to share first a few challenges, and then I will share some highlights, and then I'll end my little brief presentation with some thank yous. So I want to be honest with everyone who's listening. This whole process, as we've heard, is quite strenuous and very long, and I would do us a short service if I didn't say it was stressful for everybody, including me right now. I'm very nervous and speaking in front of everybody, but this whole process for the last few months have been literally tears and sweat put by everybody who's had a part of opening day for October 12th. Everywhere from synthesizing information to keeping track of the ever-changing information, from all the updates to the guidelines, such as the tiers, the scheduling, establishing student cohorts, and all the while making sure that we continue to support all of our students within our sites. And I believe the most challenging for many of the principals, as I'm speaking on behalf of tonight, is making sure that in addition to all of this, we are also tasked with keeping up the morale of our teachers and our staff on a daily basis, and always continuing to be that rock for our staff and to our community. I do want to share some highlights because there are several of them from opening day yesterday. The one that really shines out to me is all of our kinders and our first graders did a phenomenal job of keeping their masks on throughout the day, and did a phenomenal job washing their hands, using the restrooms, maintaining social distancing, and using hand sanitizer whenever possible. And even though they had their masks on, I could really tell they were smiling because it showed through their eyes and through their body language. And so that was a moment of reflection and a reminder for why we all got into this profession, is to be able to see and hear children and to work with children. And it just brought a bunch of joy to all of us who were able to witness that. Also, another highlight was actually walking through our campuses with Dawn, Karen, Todd. Todd came out and walked our campuses. And so that was really nice to actually be able to see all of our hard work, our tears and our sweats being, the kids actually going through the motions, and all of our hard work had come into fruition yesterday and today. And with each day, it gets a little smoother. So today's check-in with Parent Square, it took a fraction of the time that it did yesterday. And so I'm hopeful that as each day goes on, the Parent Square check-in will just be smoother and smoother and like clockwork. And then I want to end this brief presentation with some thank yous, because this whole task, and this is just the beginning, because we have October 26th and November 9th and beyond to plan for, but this would not be possible without our tremendous supports, our meetings, our communications between our front office staff, our secretaries, our clerks, our custodians, transportation, food services, maintenance department, landscaping, and various meetings with district office personnel. And obviously, last but not least, our amazing, amazing teachers who are in the front line of the work day in and day out. So thank you. Leslie.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Leslie Crane, and I am the principal of Duveneck School. And thank you for having me speak tonight at the board meeting. I want to echo what Iris just spoke about, and I call it the village. And it's the village of people that came forward courageously. And she's right, this has not been an easy process. It's been a lot of challenge, a lot of hard work and effort, a lot of overcoming our fears, persevering and becoming more and more resilient as we march forward into this school year. The village, as she said, are our courageous and talented teachers and support staff, office staff, custodians, maintenance workers, food service, transportation, our TOSAs, our informational technology supporters. All of those people and beyond are the ones that have helped us get to where we are right now. For me personally, I love being part of a community, and I love serving the Duveneck community to the best of my ability. And I feel as a leader, it's my role and responsibility to be that bedrock and to be the person that people can turn to for support, and for me to motivate and to carry us through to our end goal, and that is to meet the needs of our students in whichever capacity. And I want to make sure that we're also honoring those families that are choosing the distance learning program, because they've made a choice and we don't want them to become invisible. At least Duveneck's going to be working really hard to continue to be a unified community, no matter which platform that you've chosen. And our PTA right now is working on some community activity efforts to maintain that throughout this school year. Some highlights of yesterday on our first day. I would say that the parents were very excited, and everyone lined up appropriately as the child kind of crossed the threshold into school. Parents had their iPhones out. They were taking pictures. They were taking videos. It was as if it was a red carpet event, is the only way that I can explain it. It was the cutest thing. Our fifth graders had created some posters. So we had their posters taped along the wall that was welcoming them to school, balloons. It was quite festive. And I think people were very appreciative. At the end of the day, when we brought the students back, the same iPhones were out, videotaping. The red carpet was back as the children crossed the threshold back to their families. and it went wonderful. Later that day, I got an email from one of our kinder parents whose son came home and said, I want to go to school on Saturday and Sunday too. I had the best time ever today at school. Do we have a lot of things to work on and improve upon? Absolutely. We have not perfected everything. There's many things that we need to work on and improve upon. But to have a positive start, to watch these amazing teachers and students in the classrooms, to have the parent support within the community means more than anything. So again, it's just my true honor to be part of this district, to serve Duveneck School. And thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share tonight.
Thank you, Leslie and Iris. I also want to add that one of the things that I noticed was when parents were dropping their kindergartners off, who were coming back with their banker boxes full of their supplies from distance learning, the parents looked dazed and confused as to, what do I do now? I've had my children with me since March and now they're gone. What do I do? So we suggested that some of them go get a nice cup of coffee in a quiet place. The other thing, speaking of coffee and food, is that we have received an extension on our food services, and all children will be able to receive free lunches at school from now to the end of the school year. And so we're very excited about that. So it also shortens the time in line at the school. So I will turn it now back to Dr. Austin.
Our last guest for tonight is Kathy Lawrence, who's our Director of Secondary Ed, to just give a quick update on athletic cohorts and extracurriculars.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. You know, as with all aspects of education, COVID-19 has really impacted our extracurricular activities, including high school athletics. So when we start talking about athletics in particular, the California Interscholastic Federation, also known as CIF, and the Central Coast section, which is the section that we belong to in the state, also known as CCS, took the summer and reviewed the guidance that was being presented by the governor and the county health departments. And because of the uncertainty around the pandemic, they decided to essentially condense 3 sports seasons, the fall, the winter, and the spring sports seasons, into 2 seasons. There's now a season 1 and a season 2. And they've divided the sports up into those various assorted seasons, with the seasons practices beginning December 12th. So and they also then changed their bylaws, made a temporary shift in their bylaws that extended the summer conditioning through until December 12th, when the season starts. So working with the athletic directors and Dr. Austin's input and looking at all the various guidelines that we had to adhere to, we were able to resume the athletic conditioning on Monday, September 14th. And we put into place all of the COVID-19 safety protocols that were required. All the activities are outdoors. They remain outdoors now. Masks for the coaches and athletes. Coaches have to wear them at all times. The athletes have to wear them to and from practice, and if they are not exercising. We made stable cohorts of 14, and they had to remain in that cohort for a minimum of 3 weeks. And then if there was somebody who needed to change for scheduling reasons or whatever, that was fine, but it's not a wholesale shift in cohorts at that point. The physical distancing, I watched the football coaches at Gunn. They set up cones 6 feet apart, so the kids had to be by their cone. They couldn't leave it other than, as they were doing their exercises. Ironically, one of the things that was hard for the kids to remember was not to all pile their stuff up together. So they learned, okay, their stuff goes by their cone, and et cetera. So that was an interesting thing. So the cohorts, each person within a cohort has to remain 6 feet apart. The coaches have to remain 6 feet apart. And if there were multiple cohorts on the field, they had to be at least 25 feet apart. We started with no equipment. It's just conditioning. The kids had not been working out in a long time, and we wanted to make sure that they got some conditioning back before they started using any equipment. So again, I go back to the idea of the learning curve. You know, nobody's perfect the first time they do something. And so these were new routines for the athletes to remember to wear their mask to practice and to remember to sign in. We do have them doing a check-in, a health check-in every day before practice. They had to, again, the gear. So it's really good to hear that at first the coaches had to remind the athletes multiple times, don't congregate, stay apart, don't drop your stuff, a lot of don'ts. It's really kind of sad. So now they got to the point where they can do it. The learning curve, they've learned the new routines. And so the athletic directors, Nelson Gifford and Kurt Johansson, have been out at practices watching, and they said it's really going very well now. As of Monday, September 28th, the athletes that had been conditioning for 2 weeks, they were allowed to use equipment individually, not unshared equipment. So lacrosse sticks, if they had their own balls, they could play with their own balls, but not share it with someone else. And they took it home with them each day. The athletic directors are working with the safety department to determine what equipment is needed for us. And when we go into the gyms, to disinfect a lot of equipment, and then go from there. So once we can do that, and we've determined those safety precautions for those indoor spaces, then we will also start looking at how do we start getting our indoor sports an opportunity to practice indoors. Our volleyball teams would really, really like to be able to start practicing. The other thing that the ADs have been really good, mindful of, and good about notifying the teams is the air quality. We went through that space where we had some really poor air quality, and they were on it. And when the air quality was above 150, then the practices were canceled. The other new development that's come up, which is really nice, is that the coaches who are doing this summer conditioning, the district is able to pay those coaches a $500 stipend for this extended summer training time, which is really nice, because I tell you, the athletes are so excited to be able to be out and about and practice in a safe manner right now. The other extracurricular activities have started meeting also with most of the same safety parameters in place. The big difference is that the athletes do not have to wear a mask while they're in physical exertion. The other extracurricular activities, they need to wear their mask all the time. That's one of the big differences. And so that's really kind of the quick update of athletics.
All right, Ms. Lawrence, thank you. Two last thoughts in conclusion. Number one, we have attached the district enrollment report, and as previously noted, it is one page, and that is for a couple reasons. Number one, you use those lengthier reports to look at trends, and there is hopefully not ever going to be a trend that looks like last year. So there's nothing normal about last year. The report shouldn't be normal either. We're down about 880 students. That's not a secret. The number is clearly on that report. What is more important is, as a percentage, we're down very similarly to surrounding school districts, and we expect a large percentage of that to return to us, and we would not, we will not be predicting or projecting what that percentage may be, but we are pretty confident that Stanford will return at some point in time, and that so will their graduate students and their professors and their families. And we also expect that people that left for second homes, predominantly in Utah and in Idaho, will return also. Some of those left because the schools were open. We will be open someday also. So we also believe that the tech industry will return to in-person at some point in time, and some of those who have left for places that are more affordable will return as well. But again, those will happen when they happen, but we do expect some percentage, a large percentage, to return. Number two, there was some questions about, will there be another window of opportunity for elementary school students to choose between the two models? The answer is a qualified yes. And around the semester time, as we head into that January period of time, we will open up to a transfer policy, transfer process for a space available. So if there's space available and we can accommodate, we will. But it needs to not create chaos for the entire district again. So it could be that a person could get the number one option, which would be great. It could be that they want to switch between models and it works out nicely, great. It could mean that they're going to have a teacher change or even a site change. Then they'd have to make a decision. But that's not something that will have to come back here for action. That is staff work that we'll handle through the normal process of a transfer process. That is the conclusion of our report. So we'll turn it back to Mr. Collins.
Great. Thank you for that lengthy, a cast of tens participated in that, and I really appreciate the detail and richness of what you guys were able to report. Okay, so the next step is community comment. And so now is the time to raise your hand if you want to comment on this item. And I don't see any hands raised. Oh, there's one. So I'll wait a beat and see if we get many more so we can set the initial time. And I'm not seeing much more, so we'll start with 3 minutes, and we'll include anyone who gets their hand up by the time the first person ends up speaking. And the first speaker is Ashley Seng.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So I really appreciate all the efforts PAUSD and the board members put on to reopen, but I also would like to acknowledge the teachers who work hard to stand at the front line. So tonight, I'm really glad to hear they have more options. So the option is not only resign if they feel uncomfortable to go back to school. So I hope as the principals comment, Palo Alto School District should be a nice community for all the students and the families and also the staff. I hope the school district can continue go on that route. Respect your teachers and treat them like how you like to be treated. I hope the teacher, they can feel be cherished and stay in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that is the only public comment. And so now we'll turn to board member question comments. And it looks like, yeah, why don't Mr. Darup start you off? And Ms. Baden-Caswell, I see your hand up, and you can go after Mr. Darup.
Thank you. I wasn't sure whether to virtually raise my hand or really raise my hand. Thank you to everybody for the reports and for the efforts. I mean, I think we have asked an incredible amount of staff, of teachers, of parents, and of students multiple times over the last several months and on a continuing basis. And these periods of change are when we ask the most, I think. I mean, and it's not just us up here. I mean, the community is asking a lot of us. We are asking a lot of the community, of the teachers. I mean, it goes all ways. And at the very top, sort of COVID the circumstances around it are mandating those asks. So I think that, everyone has done a sort of phenomenal job, and I'm very, very proud of all the work that's been done here, among everyone who I can see physically right now, who's been working in the district office, who's been working all summer without nonstop, to the teachers who have shifted to distance learning, which, we all went into that thinking, there's just no way. And the teachers made it work, and you all made it work. And now we're doing this next phase. And it's just as hard, if not harder, as when we initially had to make the decision to shut down physical schools and go distance. And I remember Dr. Austin telling me that it's going to be harder to come back than it is to close schools, and it is. I was on a few campuses on last Friday and this Monday on the first day of school, because I said when we voted that I do not want to send our teachers and our kids onto campuses and into classrooms that I wouldn't be willing to go to myself, that I wouldn't be willing to send my daughter to if she was old enough. And so my focus has really been on safety. And I am very satisfied with what I've seen so far in terms of safety. And of course, there are a few issues, but by and large, and in terms of the things that really matter when it comes to the safety, I talk to teachers, I talk to staff, I talk to our custodians and our front office staff at our schools that I visited, to really, really, get in and see where the holes were. Those purifiers are great. I think that the PPE, along the way, what I've seen is a lot of issues just come from communication breakdowns that are being resolved at the site level, and that we have emphasized are critical. But the HVAC systems, the PPE, the hand washing stations, this is all really critical stuff that was done very quickly. To send a truck down to pick up the hand washing stations because they wouldn't get shipped in time is exactly the type of commitment that I was expecting and hoping for when I said, my vote is contingent on us getting the safety stuff done. And other board members said something to that effect as well. And that's great. I don't want to minimize at all the concerns that teachers still have, some of which were raised by Ms. Baldwin, because this is an incredibly stressful time. And I spoke one-on-one with a number of teachers who are in the classrooms, a few teachers, and the stress is real. And the concern is real, and there are real supports that the teachers need to continue doing what they're doing. As Ms. Brown said, figuring out how to teach a distance class and a hybrid class, and juggling that and doing it while also being anxious about going home to a family member who's high risk. These are things that, again, I would, in my mind at least, I'm pivoting a little bit away from making sure that our very basic necessary safety needs are met, which I'm confident that they are, to now focusing on what is sort of the higher tier in the Maslow's hierarchy of reopening in my head, which is it's the next step, which is really, now that people are physically there safely, maintaining that and fixing the little glitches that may arise, but figuring out the staffing and logistical issues. And more than figuring out, because I know that we have plans for those things, I think honing in on where the disconnects may be between teachers who are on the ground implementing and between district level and even principal level creation of the plans. Because and not that that's not being done, but that's of course where the sort of rubber meets the road. And just hearing what the teachers have to say about concerns, because this is just, this is work, and it's again, everyone is doing a really great job. I was blown away by my visits to the schools, and Mr. Collins was there for one of them, a couple of them actually, but we got to see recess at Hoover, and it was so joyous to see those kids get onto a playground, get on a slide for the first time in what might have been months, half a year, eat outside. It's I don't think anybody is underestimating how valuable it is, but yeah, I just want to thank everyone. The one thing I just want to bring up is Dr. Austin at the last board meeting. there was conversation about an ask, and I think we spoke about this earlier a couple days ago, but a ticketing, the report on the ticketing system, that's something that I still would like to see, and I didn't see it here. And I know other board members also asked for, I see the safety checklist on here. That's the safety checklist that's on each classroom. But a report on that checklist would be really helpful in terms of these are all the classrooms sort of broken down into a spreadsheet, into a report, and these are all the items that were checked off, and these are the outstanding issues, so that I think the board can get a high level view of, just making sure that the safety is continuing to be, things aren't falling through the cracks. So I think that's a report that I would like to see in addition to the ticketing system. I think I heard that from other board members last time, but I think they are free to correct me if I misheard. But those are the two things that I would like to see next time.
I'd just like to clarify the request to make sure we're on the same page. I mean, there could be a period of time when we have 800 classrooms open. Probably not this year, but it could head, let's say it's half of that. Let's say it's 400. I wouldn't expect that we would want 400 classrooms saying everything's good by classroom. Would it satisfy for the board members, and not just you, this is for everybody, if we talked about resolved issues instead of a class by class spreadsheet? Because the idea is, if the principal walks in to do the checklist, everything looks good, they're set for the next week, that gets re-signed, dated, and posted. I'm not sure that there's the value of having seen that 400 times on a spreadsheet. So am I going the right direction here on what you're asking for?
And this sort of bleeds into the ticketing system thing, which is issues that were raised and then issues that were resolved and issues that were outstanding. So yeah, I mean, for me, that would be fine for me. I just want to be able to see that that when issues are raised, that issues are identified, issues are being identified where they exist, and they're being addressed, and they're being resolved. So that's the thing that I would like. I think other board members will speak to the specifics if there were other asks.
Okay, Ms. Baden-Caswell and then Mr. Dauber.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank every single teacher and staff member. And Iris did a great job of listing every different staff job that she could think of, so I don't need to repeat it all. And also the folks in the district office who've worked so hard. And, I think a lot of people don't realize, they come in, they see their teacher there, they don't realize everything that's been, all the work that's being done. I really appreciated the slideshow at the beginning showing that we actually had employees drive down to Southern California with a moving van to make sure we had the things we needed in the classroom. But I want to thank all the teachers for opening up their classrooms with a smile, for being there for the kids. I know I had parents calling me whose kids were really, really happy to see their teacher, know that their teacher is still in the classroom. They think the teacher lives in the classroom. All of our kids believe that. So thank you to all of you for all your hard work and your continued hard work, and the principals, because everything that happens on a site, the principal is in some way involved in and has to manage. And so I just want to thank you for all being so supportive. I want to comment on Dr. Austin's question and Shaunik's suggestion. It was my belief that we're going to have some sort of spreadsheet like that. And let me tell you what I'm trying to get to, because it doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, but I want to be able to answer these questions. What percentage of our classrooms have all these issues resolved? Is it, we opened and 95% of our classrooms had all the issues on the checklist resolved? If not, where are the holes? Are they in a particular area? Like, are they washing stations? Or are they PPE? What are the issues? And where are those issues? Because if we see them in a concentrated place, we may send some more resources or suggest that. That's what I want to be able to see. I don't need to read 800 classroom reports. But I think this will go a long way with the community as well. and the teachers that are still concerned about going back, for them to see what have we actually done, because there's concern, there's nervousness, and it didn't go away after we made a commitment that this would all be done. So I think we have to show it, and then we can look at it over time. So that, Dr. Austin, is what I'm looking for. And I don't know that you can invent it on the fly right now, but I expected to at least know what percentage of our classrooms these things have been fully fixed in, and what are we going to do to make sure the others get resolved. Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to ask the rest of my questions?
No, I think that's fine. I may follow up with some of you even later. I mean, the reality is, as far as a checklist exists, there is not a classroom that's open that is not 100% certified on the checklist. So it just might mean that I need to get a little more understanding from you guys, but it's totally fine. I've got enough to get started.
Okay, and Dr. Austin, I didn't say 100% because I didn't know if I could expect it, but yep. I love that answer. We should know at any point in time how we're doing.
That's fine. I got that. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. So I have some other questions. One is, what are the steps in our process to create a plan for opening high school? What are the things that we need to go through? I think this would be helpful, not just for the board, but also the community. Obviously, it's way more complicated at the middle school and high school. I should have said secondary, at the middle school and high school level. And so what are those steps? Because we don't have that many weeks between now and January.
Yeah, I think, well, I know I can be prepared to answer that question better at our next meeting. So a better, more formal, thorough answer. But I can tell you it was a central topic of our superintendent's meeting today with the entire county, including some requests that we had made of the public health department, some statements that are unclear. And I would say my ask of the county was to reduce or eliminate the term "when practicable." I think that's an absolute throwaway statement. We want to know what aligns with the best science of the day, and if it doesn't, then where practicable is meaningless as far as I'm concerned. And I think I've swayed many other superintendents to feel exactly the same way. So we have some work to do, but I would like to bring back at our next meeting at least the outline of the steps to get us back in for secondary.
Okay, that's great. And I encourage our staff, who I'm sure are already doing this, to look out across the country, because there are some high schools and middle schools open across the country. And what are the steps they've taken, and are they practical or possible for us to take in terms so that we're not reinventing the wheel on this, because this is a hard problem. That was.
I just want to acknowledge it is so awkward, Ms. Baton-Caswell. I am looking at you and nodding my head, and then it's meaningless because I'm looking at a screen and the camera's over here. So I am acknowledging and we're on the same page. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that okay, Sinus. I can see that. The committee to work through reopening issues that includes teachers and principals and staff. Sort of what's the plan on that? I mean, there were a number of things, detail-oriented things that were brought up by Ms. Baldwin earlier, and it would be just nice to know that those are being worked through. Some of them sound like they may be happening at multiple sites, so leaving each site alone might not be the most practical way to solve them.
So Ms. Hendricks and Ms. Baldwin are putting together that group, and that's going to start. And again, that wasn't a pre-reopening. That is okay, now we've opened the doors. What are the things that we had missed or we might want to revise even in the future months out? So that we can have a update on that at the next meeting also.
Okay, that would be amazing. And I thought we were putting paper towels in all the bathrooms. So I don't want to get into all the other details, but is that true or not true?
I don't think that was a universal decision at this point.
Okay.
That is not a guideline from the public health department. That is a school of thought that some have, but that is not a written guideline at this point.
Okay. Well, so getting an update on how we're working through issues would be really, really helpful. And then finally, I understand what you said about the enrollment report, but I am want to make sure that we have visibility into the class size. And so if we can get a report at the next meeting that shows what class sizes are, that would, individual classroom class sizes, that would be really helpful. I know they're being split in the hybrid model. So if you have 20 students, you have 10 at a time. But I just want to see what our division is this year.
All right, I will follow up on that and see what is available. And of course, those things are shifting by the moment. So even a week from now, that report will look very different than it would today.
Okay. Whatever you think would give me information that, and give my board colleagues and the community information on sort of the big picture would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dauber and then Ms. DeBrienta.
Thank you for the report, and thanks to all of the staff. I just want to add my sentiments to those of my board colleagues. I think I'm deeply grateful to staff, all the staff members who've brought us to this point, and I think that's broadly shared in the community. I think it's been an extraordinary effort, and I understand the concerns that people have had for safety, and I also want to particularly express appreciation for those who have worked so hard to comply with all of the county and state health guidelines, and to, I think, go the extra mile in making sure that we're providing a safe environment for staff and students. In terms of the question of reporting, I think from my perspective, I'm interested in essentially the statistic that I heard Dr. Austin say, which is that 100% of classrooms that are open are meet the requirements that we have set. And if there are at some point classrooms that are open that don't meet that standard, I think it'd be useful to know what percentage that is and what steps staff is taking to mitigate that. But I don't need myself more in detail than that, and I want to try to reduce the burden on staff to produce reports to the extent that we can, while still getting visibility into the overall state of things. So that's the level of insight that I would advocate for. I think in terms of Ms. Baden-Caswell's proposal, I do think it is useful to get a sort of a high level view about what class sizes look like. I think kind of an average and a range would be fine as well. I think that'll give us a good picture without getting too much into the details, but obviously others might have a different view on that. Thanks.
Ms. DeBrienta.
Okay, thanks. Being almost the last to go, it sounds a little redundant to say I'm grateful to all staff. I really appreciated Iris, Ms. Wong, and Ms. Crane really calling out every single piece of the puzzle here, from our custodians, our office staff, our lunch staff, our bus drivers. I mean, so many people have been working so hard to make this happen. So really grateful to all of you for the work you've done, and for all of our teachers and aides and everything, and to our principals. So when it comes to this safety report, I'm a little torn. My full expectation is that every classroom meets 100% of those check. I mean, if there's a classroom that there's a concern with, I don't want teachers and kids to be in it. So I do want to have a sense if there's something that we're struggling with, if there's some filters that aren't right, or there's purifiers not working, or there's a hand washing station. But I fully expect that if there is that problem while we are working on it, kids aren't in that room and teachers aren't in that room. So I am interested in knowing what problems are coming up. I'm also expecting that the checklists that are there at every classroom are accurate and are updated weekly and are telling us what we need to know. So I'd hope that if a principal found that there was an issue when she's doing her checklist, she's immediately reporting it up and we're immediately taking care of it. Yes, I'm interested in knowing the issues that are arising, but my assumption, and I think probably the whole board's assumption, is that everything is in place 100%. I've got several different pop-up questions here. One is, so I went to a few campuses last week and this week, and it was really good to be there for a number of reasons, I think. One, it's just good to be in a classroom again, on a campus again, but a chance to talk to teachers and staff and hear the anxiety, the fears, the concerns, the questions. And again, I think Mr. Drop said it well, that I think that those safety measures were in place, but the staff didn't all have confidence that they were all in place, right? They either didn't know them yet, or they weren't sure about them, or they didn't see them yet. So again, it's that communications piece, which I'm glad it's agendized for a little bit later. But I do think that they were in place, and just being able to talk to some teachers and hearing those concerns really, brought it home. And I'm glad that yesterday and today have gone so well. They're, Facebook is not necessarily a reflection of all things, but there were definitely some Facebook posts on some school pages and on, Palo Alto pages, and people like, how'd the first days go? And parents were so happy. They were really excited at how happy their kids were. They were excited that their kids had a chance to go. No one said tears. I'm sure there were tears, but people were really happy about it. I appreciated hearing about the employee assistance program that Gunn presented, and that I know that has been pushed out to Harold. That was one of the conversations I've had with a few different teachers, that they weren't sure what those supports were. And I see them in my Harold, and I'm hearing you say that you've been pushing them out, and that Gunn has this sort of webinar that's going to be shared widely. And I think that's really great, because I'll get into it a little bit more, in a later comment, but the mental health and wellness and anxiety and isolation of students and teachers and families is just so high that I think we can't be pushing that stuff out too much, right? I mean, just making sure everyone knows all the supports that are available. And it's still probably not enough, but it's we're just going to do it, I think, as regularly as we can. I'm curious, is there a certain schedule by which HVAC filters are changed or cleaned or whatever? Is that typically an annual thing, and now it's more? And do we know that answer?
Sure, happy to answer that question. Those filters are changed quarterly.
Okay. All right. And so they were just changed before school started, and they'll be changed before we all came back in person, or over the summer when I'm not sure when that happened.
Oh, well, it's actually a little bit of both, because they were changed over the summer, and then we were able to secure a source that provided MERV 13 filters, which we could use in our MERV 8 system, which previously we had been looking into, and we hadn't yet at that point found a source. So they were changed over the summer. As we all know, the classrooms weren't used over the summer, and then we went ahead and changed them just right in September, as soon as we were able to get the new filters, the MERV 13, and put those in place.
Great, thanks. Okay, that's helpful. I already asked that one. So PAUSD Plus, thank you for that update on how things are going. Very clear that, the attendance increased significantly, and I guess now that elementary is back in hybrid, Ms. Conway touched on it a little bit, in some ways the support may be even greater because there's less synchronous, and more changes. If it's, what do you feel like our limit is to expanding it right now? Is it staffing? Is it dollars? Is it, why would we not have it in every cluster right now? Or, I don't know who's best to answer that.
I'm going to touch on part of that. Staffing is an issue. Ms. Hendricks has been really nice about it, but we have staff who aren't back. And we don't believe that virtual PAUSD Plus adds enough value. We don't think that that's the way to go whole scale. So we need people with people. So we're trying to find other avenues to get there. So staff is number one. We also don't want to go so fast that we inadvertently create a mistake with our flow. I mean, there's a reason we did the staggered start, which I'm so thankful that we went with the staggered start. Reintroducing more people too early gets us out of the whole strategy behind the staggered start. So I think we just want to be mindful of that.
That makes sense. Okay, I do hope that, it's clear that it's a benefit for some kids. And so I hope that in a reasonable pace, we can find a way to make it happen, whether it's partnerships with outside orgs or whether it's us staffing it somehow. The secondary plan is another thing that, it's obviously time that we talk about it in some way, whether it's a start, putting together committees for it or whether it's, just starting to lay out plans for what it could look like, if it's going to happen in January, if so, what that might look like. And either way, I think it was nice to hear Ms. Lawrence talk about some sports coming back and some other activities starting to come back. Just to clarify, did she say there was a stipend for coaches who are coming now? There's an extra stipend? I missed it.
Yeah, there's two things. So one thing that we realized is just because the season was delayed didn't mean that it delayed people working with our students, and we wanted to honor that. So we did go back and put in place a stipend for that work for the coaches who had been working with athletes all the way through. And the other part, just on the secondary, while we have work to do, I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have an MOU that defines what the secondary instruction looks like right now. So it is not that we don't have anything in place. That's actually been done for quite a while. We still have work to do in other areas, but I just don't want to forget that has been negotiated and done.
Okay, but so at the last board meeting, I just clarified that probably people who stayed remote when we did offer hybrid would not just have home hospital school as their only option.
That's right. I would say the hybrid portion is pretty dialed out, meaning that's been pretty fully negotiated. We have questions around online options. Okay. So we've kind of narrowed it down. So I just don't want people to think there's a blank slate there. There isn't.
No, that's a good point.
But there are definitely some places where we have heavy lifting ahead.
And in that, we've also talked about this before, not everyone plays sports, right? Some kids are into other activities and some aren't in any club, but still really would benefit from that return. So it sounds like, I think what Ms. Lawrence said was we're starting to do this, look at this other stuff and what that can look like, right? Yeah, I think that's really important as we don't even really know what January is going to look like. And even if we do, we don't want to wait till January before kids have a chance to get back. The last thing I just wanted to touch on was just mental health in general. And I don't think this is a surprise to any of us because I think we're all struggling in some ways. And this isn't a PAUSD problem. This is an all, kids, all teens, all staff. Everyone's struggling, right? And I'm talking to so many parents whose kids are struggling or struggling themselves and teachers are struggling. So I just want to make sure that no matter what we're focusing on, that wellness, we're reaching out in all ways we can reach out. We are offering all things that we can offer. We are checking in with staff. We are checking in with students. I'm sure the teachers are seeing it, right? It's probably really hard to engage some kids or I think we just can't be doing too much of this wellness outreach. And I just wonder if I know we're a little surveyed out, but reaching out to all families to find out really how they're doing, right? Are you looking for more resources than you currently are connected to? Or how is it going in general? And maybe that's a site-by-site thing to do, I don't know. But I do think it's really important that we just make sure we kind of hear from as many families as we can to get a good handle on if there's a trend of something else we could be offering. Again, I don't think it's a PAUSD problem. I think it's an everyone problem, but these 10,801 kids are ours, and 1,000 plus staff. So I guess that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And I get to go last, actually, but you covered so many of the points I was going to cover, so it'll be very brief. I did want to mention that I had the opportunity to visit half a dozen elementary schools on Monday, and ran into Mr. Dara, ran into Dr. Austin not once but twice with 2 different staff members in tow, one morning, one afternoon. Met with the principals, met with teachers, met with custodians and playground attendants, and it was awesome. Met with parents and kids, and it was to me a great testimony to the strength of our district, and I mean by that both the people who work here and all the families and students who participate, because there was nothing about it that wasn't awesome. I do want to echo the appreciation of teachers and principals and classified staff, school secretaries, unbelievably vital in this situation. Calling parents, I saw kids who came in and they didn't have their health check clean, and the school secretaries, kids sitting on a bench isolated, and they're trying to find the parent so they can get the health check done so the kid can go to class. It was all great. Everybody working as hard as they possibly could to support our kids and our families. On the issue of reporting of, I guess just one more thing there. I want to encourage, we've been very full in our praise, and appropriately so, I think. I want to encourage anybody who's listening in our parent community to be similarly full in their praise. And so when you see your principal or your teacher, make sure they know that how much you appreciate what they're doing. We see these signs around town. We've seen them for a long time about heroes, right? So teachers and everybody who works on our campus are essential workers. And they're at work not because they think that's a great idea and they're not really concerned about COVID. They're in work despite of that. And so hearing the appreciation from our community, I think would really go a long way to make these people feel that, it's all worth it and that their sacrifice is recognized. So turning from that to checklists, I did have the opportunity, because I was on a bunch of campuses and I'm very checklist oriented. Probably not everybody realizes these checklists are taped to the front of each door and pinned to the inside of each room. So these checklists are not mysterious in any way. They're like, you can't miss them. You literally can't miss them. The ones that Ms. Chow showed earlier in her presentation, I saw in every door and saw in every room. And so my experience, I think the report that's being talked about to me is like the checklist. It's either check or not check. It's check if every room is checked, if every room meets standard. If it's not checked, then here's a list of the rooms that don't meet standard and why. I would expect that, and if there, to Ms. DeBrienza's point, if there are kids in those rooms, I sure as hell want to know why. If part of the standard is, they have to have 3 weeks of PPE or something, and there's only 2 weeks, it's like, okay, that's fine. I don't know what the standards are, but if the standard is the ventilation has to be working and it's not, then there shouldn't be any kids in that room. If we have to cancel school, we cancel school. So I think I don't want to see a 400 line report. I want to see a report that says check or says not check, and here are the list of the exceptions, and it better be small. There was one more thing that Ms. Baden-Caswell said that I just wanted to comment on. What was the thing that she asked for? I can't remember. I can't remember. Ms. Baden-Caswell, was there something else that you asked for an opinion on? Or something else that you were looking for?
I was looking for the plan for the process for high school I
Oh,
was
yeah,
I'm sorry, secondary. I keep saying high school. That's not what I mean. I mean secondary.
okay.
And is how we were,
No, I mean, that I think will come, and, you know, I agree, we need to start talking about, now that we've got one thing done, now we can proceed with the other thing. What was the other thing, Ms. Brown? Oh, class size. Well, yeah, so on the enrollment report, you know, as you guys know, I worship the enrollment report. I have my own 50-year collection of enrollment reports at home. And interestingly, the enrollment report that was issued as part of the board packet is exactly was the entire enrollment report, probably up until 1990 something, because that's what I got. And then it started to expand with this trend data, I think in response to the fact that enrollment was growing and people felt the need to understand that trend better over time. But the enrollment report, as we now envision it, is this the world's greatest K-12 enrollment report, to be perfectly honest, is a relatively new invention and reflected the needs of the time. I mean, it was basically an aggregation of things added to respond to particular things, like the overflow report is not that germane now, but was incredibly important 7 or 8 years ago when we had 100 kids overflowed every year. So I agree with Dr. Austin. There's not a lot of trend data to be gathered in this particular edition of the report. So I'm very mindful of the amount of time it takes staff to create a report that is precise and actually reflects the detail of what's going on. And I'm incredibly cognizant of how much that detail is changing. Any information we issue about class sizes today will literally be wrong tomorrow, because you're going to sit down and do grade 3 and 4, grade 2 and 3 classes tomorrow, right? So I think we have to be mindful that we're chasing an elusive precision in the current environment. So additional data I think would be great. I think it should be at a higher level. I don't think we should expect the kind of precision and detail that we've come to expect in the past, because I think it will elude us, and chasing it will take a lot of staff hours that can be spent on other things. So information I think would be appreciated, but I don't think it needs to be at a high degree of detail. That's one board member's opinion. The last thing I wanted to point out, and you mentioned it in passing, Dr. Austin, but I really want to emphasize it. There is now on our website, on a page, Return to Campus COVID-19 data, the number of cases reported by week, by program, and what kind of notifications were given, which is a report I had asked for, and I'm very appreciative that it's been provided and put on our website. And I do think this is a model for some of the things that I think my colleagues were asking for. Even if we think of this as, hey, not much to see here. Basically, it shows since August 16th, 3 staff members reported positive cases and 0 students. So that's great. We know that. We think, boy, that's not very much given how much COVID there is in the county. But that said, it's very useful for people to see that there's nothing to see. So we don't think of this report as incredibly informative, but for people who don't have any information, or relying on rumors, or don't really know, this is actually useful information. So the same might be true with, classroom, the checker exception report thing, or, or how many, what the filter changing schedule is. I think people just want to know that, and we know it's okay, but we want them to know it's okay too. So thinking about how to communicate stuff that, that is not hard for us to communicate, and it's just a matter of creating transparency so people can feel comfortable. I think that we should more than usual default to just making that information available, as opposed to saying, gosh, yet another report. Let's figure it, and I think the board on its part can try to be flexible in terms of what we look for, so it doesn't create undue burdens for you to create. All right, so that's all I got. I want to bring back, since we brought back being in person, I wanted to bring back another tradition, which is the 5-minute break. And especially since we're wearing masks in here, a 5-minute mask break would, I think, be very appreciated. So let's take a 5-minute break. It is 9:45, so I'm sorry, 8:45? Thank you, that's much better. So let's reconvene at 8:50. All right, thank you.
We entered into this agreement on October 5th. What I'd like to do is really extend an appreciation to the PAEA negotiating team, Terry Baldwin, President, and Mimi Park, lead negotiator. I think we met 8 specific times for this round of negotiations, this MOU, approximately 30 hours. So the investment of time in important discussions was really appreciated. There are some components of the MOU that stand out and have already been addressed to some extent in terms of COVID-19 testing, HVAC systems, air quality. There's a section on leave provisions, which is pertinent to our earlier conversation as well, in terms of additional leave opportunities. So those are some of the components of the agreement. This is a first time at the board for this, this tentative agreement. It'll come back on October 27th for approval. It is pending ratification by PAEA as well. It's a brief overview of the tentative agreement and open to discussion and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll take public comment first, and appropriately enough, we have one comment from PAEA President Terry Baldwin. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I would just like to say that we were glad to also get this kind of wrapped up. It did take a while, so we're happy to have that done. It was noted that it was pending ratification, and while we did ratify the 2 previous MOUs, that is actually not a norm with MOUs. Usually they're just approved by our executive board. The other 2 were just so lengthy and I guess just a difference than a normal MOU that we felt we needed a ratification from the membership. This one is just adding some extra safety precautions and not changing anything as drastically. So we will bring that to our executive board. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for that clarification. Okay, if there's any other, I guess that's it for public comment. Any board member questions or comments on this item? Okay, not seeing any hands, we can bring this back at the next meeting for approval. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6C, authorization to issue addendum number 4 to HED Architects. Dr. Austin.
Okay, I'll turn this over to Dr. Golton.
And we see him on there, but we don't hear him. Dr. Golton, are you there? He's on the list here, so he's logged in. All right, why don't we come back to this item? Do you want to do that? Okay, so why don't we go to item 7A, staff report, budget update, CARES Act funds.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Chow.
All right, thank you, Dr. Austin. We've heard a bit tonight about the work that has been done throughout the district to implement the county health protocols, to provide enhanced safety measures for staff and students as we reopen our sites, and to provide improvements to district systems around our ventilation and filtration systems, as well as our cleaning and disinfecting practices. We've been able to purchase these supplies, the new equipment and the services by utilizing the CARES Act funds. Tonight's overview will show how these funds are supporting our work around safety and the focus on remote learning during the pandemic. So the CARES Act funding was part of the state's 2021 budget package. It's one-time funding, and it's comprised of 2 main sources. The largest category is the learning loss mitigation funds, and the learning loss mitigation was a priority for the governor, and he wanted these funds to go out quickly, specifically to support student academic achievement and to mitigate the learning loss that was related to the COVID-19 school closures. The learning loss mitigation funds consist of 3 sources, and those are the governor's emergency education relief, those are the GEAR funds, coronavirus relief funds, the CR funds, and the general funds, the GF funds. The second category of the CARES Act is the ESSER funds. These funds are the smallest allocation, and while they were announced in the spring, the funds did not come to districts until the 2021 fiscal year. It was a rather unique situation where we were allowed to use the funds prior to actually receiving the allocation for the funds. It's not something I would recommend for your home budgeting practice, but as we've all learned, this is not the only unique situation we've seen this year. So looking at the allocation for the CARES Act funding, as you could see, by far the largest fund source there is the coronavirus relief funds, followed by the general fund and the GEAR funds. The total for the learning loss mitigation funds to the district is just under $4.9 million. And then we have the ESSER funds at $281,000. Our total CARES Act funding is $5.17 million. So there is as I mentioned before, the governor wanted these funds to go out and be used immediately to address the learning loss. So these funds came with a pretty tight timeline for use. Here you see the hierarchy of those, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, as well as the State General Fund. Those needed to be fully expended by December 30th of this year. And the other two sources, the GEAR and the ESSER, have a spend by date of September 30th of 2022, so a little bit longer time frame on those. Here we see the expenditures and the items that have been supported through the use of the CARES Act, and they range from supporting our various curriculum purchases to PPE, some cleaning equipment specifically related to COVID-19. This would be our electrostatic disinfecting sprayers, IT tech devices, the Chromebooks that went out to students and families. We were able to support the summer PD as well as the teacher training stipend by the use of these funds. Over the summer, while our sites were closed, we contracted with some site patrol services to keep our sites free from vandalism, as well as groups that were wanting to congregate on our campuses while they were closed. We were able to purchase the air purification units, the HEPA filter air purification units with bipolar ionization, as well as the initial testing for our air quality assessments. So as of September 30th, our total encumbered or expended is just over 3.9 million of these funds. So we have a bit remaining, just a little over 1.2 million, and we have a pretty good list. This is certainly not a complete list, but it gives you an idea that there are certainly many things that the district is looking to provide continuous support or service around. And those would be the continuation of air quality assessments, rolling those out district-wide. As Ms. Conaway mentioned, our partnership with Stanford for our COVID-19 testing for staff. Part of that is that we have a nurse to support that testing. So at least through December, we could provide that through the CARES Act. As we also mentioned, that the changing of the filters is an ongoing process. So those will need to be purchased not only this year, but going forward in the future. Additional PPE will be needed, as is additional instructional and curriculum materials. The desk dividers that were purchased for the elementary sites, we purchased 5,000. We will need to purchase more for the secondary sites as we move into discussions about bringing middle school and high school students back. We are continuing our work on ventilation system improvements. These are improvements to our existing HVAC systems. The addition of the bipolar ionization devices is something we are really excited about, and we are having that tested to get a baseline with and without that bipolar ionization device. The reason this is very attractive to us and we were wanting to move forward with it is because that bipolar ionization actually deactivates the COVID virus. And then also we may need to purchase additional air purification units if we find that those are needed at the secondary sites. And there is no such thing as free money. So there's quite a bit of reporting requirements, compliance piece around these funds, because of the short timeline, the CDE wants to make sure that the funds are being used for the intended purposes, as well as by the timeline. Funds that are not used or not used for approved purchases will need to be returned. So while this is not our problem, because we are finding numerous uses for these funds, it seems to be that our challenge is more along the lines of these being one-time funds, and they're supporting services such as student academic achievement and enhanced safety measures that will likely need to continue long after this particular source of funds have been expended. And that's the summary on our CARES Act funds.
Thank you. Okay, so now's the time for public comment. And so if you want to comment on this item, you can press raise hand in Zoom, or if you're dialed in by phone, you can press *9. And I'll just wait a beat. Okay, it looks like we'll have under 10. So right now we've got one commenter, and it is PAEA President Terry Baldwin. Go ahead, Terry.
Hi, yes, I just actually had a question. Has the bipolar ionization been proven to kill COVID yet? Because I hadn't thought it was, so I don't know that we want to keep putting that out there if it hasn't been proven to. I hope it is, and I'm glad we have it if it is, but I just had a question about that. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chow, do you want to speak to that?
So the studies have shown that it deactivates the virus, and I wouldn't go out to say that it kills, but studies do show that it deactivates the virus.
All right. I mean, maybe if you can, you could send a copy of a study or whatever the summary you have to Ms. Baldwin so she can distribute it or do whatever she thinks is appropriate.
Certainly.
Okay. So that's it for, oh, and I'm sorry, there's another public comment that I think got up plenty of time. So the last speaker will be Jessica Clark. Ms. Clark, are you there? Jessica Clark?
Can you hear me now?
We do.
Okay, great. I just wanted to first reach out to Ann Brown and send her my condolences. I know she's going through a lot, and she's heading the entire elementary right now. So I wanted to reach out to you, Ann, and just commend you for being there, just being present. I also want to say the communication piece with the district is problematic, and we need to have someone in charge. I'm a kinder aide. I also have 3 kids in the district. Jennifer DiBrienza came and visited my kindergarten while we were given 2 days to get ready. I know that Shunak went somewhere else, and I want to reach out to Dawn because you said you went to Palo Verde. Did you speak to the kindergarten teachers, the TK, or the first grade teachers? I'm sorry. Is my time cut off? What am I seeing here? Sorry, I'm online as well.
Ms. Clark, I think we're happy to give this feedback. The item is the spending of CARES funds. I mean, so if you have comments on that, that would be great.
Communication. I apologize. I will wait and
Okay.
hold my peace until 7C.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize.
No problem. Okay, so board members' question and comments on the CARES fund items. And you can raise your hand in Zoom, or I see Mr. Brienza already has her hand up in person, so great, thank you.
Thank you so much for this. We're so lucky to have had this much money directed towards schools, and yet it's really stark to think about December 2020 is where most of it has to be spent by, right? It really limits how we could use it. I would have loved to have seen some of this be sort of that funding of PAUSD plus. Of course, staffing is still an issue, but it's not really wise to start setting up something where the funding is gone by, just a couple months from now. I am really grateful that some of that funding went to air purifiers. Thank you very much for getting on that. And obviously, Chromebooks had to be replaced with so many being out to homes. I thank you for breaking this down for us and really putting the timelines on it. And I'm glad that we have spent it on some really good things so far, right away while we have it.
Okay, other comments? Nothing. Okay, I just had a quick question and maybe one comment. First, I'm just very excited. It says something about our world that Ms. Chow, and I know her whole team, is literally excited about bipolar ionization devices. It just shows the world that we're in, that is a source of excitement for educators. But I think it really is. And I just wanted to emphasize, because I know many people have this conception about it, is that these are non-ozone generating bipolar ionization items. One of the main drawbacks is that most of them are ozone generating, and ozone equals smog, and that's not something you want to blow in your classrooms. But we have been able to identify UL certified non-ozone generating devices, which is pretty cool. What portion of these funds needs to be spent by 12/30, the end of this year, versus I think the other deadline is September 2022?
So the portion that needs to be spent by December is actually the bulk of it. Mm-hmm. The coronavirus relief is the 3.4 million. That has the December 30 timeline. And the other two that have been moved out to, well, one had an original September 2022, and one was originally this June of 2021, moved out to September. Those are the two smaller sources of funds. So the bulk of the funds do need to be spent by this December.
The thing I'd be mindful of, and we're a fortunate district in that most districts can't spend a dime without this money in hand, and when it's gone, it's gone. They're basically emptying the till to meet their needs. We, on the other hand, have reserves that are for the kind of extraordinary circumstances we have now. I would love to see. We've got a lot to do. We're finishing elementary, or we at least can see the end of how elementary, the next phase of elementary works. We're asking the staff to develop secondary, and that's a huge task. It's at least two different tasks, because 6, 7, 8 is different from 9 through 12, and there's a huge amount to do there, and that's not a problem that many districts have solved already. So we'll have to do a lot of learning and invention. But when we get through some of that, at the end of all of this, even if we do a heroic job, we are going to have monumental learning loss across our entire student body. There is no way, even with the fantastic job that I think our staff is doing, I think we are not going to be able to pretend that it's the equivalent of what they had received in the past and would have received if we could have in-person classes the way we have in the past. So something I think we're going to be faced with as the spring approaches is, what is our plan to identify and address learning loss across our gang? And like Mr. Brienza and others, I'd love to see us have been able to spend money on staff now to kind of accelerate or to mitigate learning loss in direct ways, though it's quite challenging. The way these funds were structured have to be expended by 12/30. I mean, it's pretty. It's the bureaucracy of Sacramento running against the reality of how school works. It's like you have to spend the money right away. That means you can't really spend it on staff because you're going to need them. But we're going to have to. I think it is incumbent on us to try to think about what happens after this year. and how we're going to fund it. And I include things like, and I think we should think very broadly. I think, summer school for everybody might be a reasonable thing to consider. We're in a position to do things that I think other districts can't, and we should not limit our imagination or flexibility, because I think we're looking at a very significant event that will impact kids over their whole lives, and we need to do what we can to address it. Okay, off my soapbox. That's the only question I had with this. Is there any other comments and questions? Seeing none, okay, we'll move to the next item. We want to go back maybe to 6C?
Yes.
Okay, 6C. Dr. Austin.
Okay, I'll turn this over to Dr. Golton. This is item 6C, authorization for an addendum.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. This is actually related to the big $30 million ABK project, building ABK project at Gunn High School. That project's funded by Measure Z. On the other hand, there was remaining money in Measure A designated for parking, and so this is the plan to update the staff and visitor parking and also the drop-off.
Great, exceptionally clear and short. This item is for discussion. Are there any comments or questions on this item? I know, as always, the building committee or the property committee has reviewed and kind of is endorsing this item. Okay, I expect we'll bring this back on consent then, yeah? Okay, all right, so moving ahead then, the next item is 7B, K-12 career theme pathways update. Dr. Austin.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Ofek to introduce our guest tonight.
All right, thank you so much. We have Dr. Che here, who's going to walk us through a very high-level overview of where we stand with career-themed pathways, something non-COVID related.
Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Ofek, and thank you for the opportunity to share updates about preparing students not just for colleges, but also for high employability in areas of their interest and aptitude through real-world hands-on experience. At state and federal level, there has been an increased emphasis to start developing career skills starting at elementary level, creating a continuum of K through 12 career pathways. Aligned with this, we have creativity cart at the elementary level, exploratory wheel and electives at the middle school level, and we have 2-year sequences of courses, dual enrollment, industry certification, and internship opportunities at the high school level. Providing snapshots of some of the ongoing work, during distance learning, we provided between 500 to 800 creativity kits every other week to socioeconomically disadvantaged elementary students, working closely with Dr. Judy Argumedo from academic support, as well as Alva Spence from food services. Creativity is one of the highly regarded future employability skills, and we plan to continue fostering creativity for our younger students. At the secondary level, we have added dual enrollments, certifications, and internships to sequences of courses. Using 2017 and 18 year as our baseline, you can see the developments in business, education, engineering, sports, stage tech, automotive pathways, only possible with the work of our dedicated teachers and their expertise. If you can go to the next slide, thank you. In summary, we started the program as a collection of electives and 2-year course sequences in 2017 and 18 academic year. The program has now grown into a more robust K through 12 career theme pathway, starting with elementary creativity and middle school articulation into high schools. The program impacts over 2,000 diverse students at the secondary level annually through many partnerships, including the ones with Lockheed Martin, Semiconductor International, Stanford, and Foothill Colleges, working all together to increase employability beyond the academics. Finally, I'd like to thank the team behind this work, Jessica Tabron Arian Toomey, Rachel Casey, Irene Wong, and Kim Carlos, as well as our CT teachers and their expertise for making this work possible. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, any questions or comments from the community? Now would be the time to raise your hand, and I see one hand go up. And it looks like we'll just have the one, and it's CSEA President Meb Steiner. Go ahead, Meb.
I just really want to express my thanks also to Jung and the whole team. I just think expanding these kind of options is so wonderful. It's options that our kids have. It's hands-on learning, the importance of, you know, creativity, working in groups, working with, building things. It can be in addition to, if you're trying to go to a four-year track, it can be in the direction of a vocation. It can be the thing that actually makes you want to come to school. And I think back on how many kids took auto, and that was the class that brought them to school. And so I am just thrilled that we are really expanding this and that we have so many pathways. I mean, the range is just phenomenal. Biotech, media arts, fashion, film, video, performing arts, which is the love of my life that I've been doing since I was in school. And I just really just want to give a huge shout out to this and encourage us to support these kind of programs and get it as widespread as possible. It's just phenomenal. So thank you so much. And it connects with, you know, some of our other things we do, our art teachers who do amazing work, and our performing arts teachers, and it's just can be such a wonderful addition to any of our academic classes to bring textbooks alive and reading materials alive, and, you know, think about how things were created in the past in history, or the mathematics that went into some of this. There's just wonderful ways of going across disciplines as well. So I'm just super, super excited by this. I think it's terrific. Thank you. And just one last thought. It reminds me so much of the diversity of the types of jobs that CSEA folks do. And we've got our maintenance people, we've got folks in tech, we've got folks working in all sorts of different areas. And it's just really exciting. And I think there's maybe opportunities to also connect mentorships with folks doing different work within our district. You know, if someone loves foods or wants to go into restaurants or whatever they want to do, there's just opportunities for us to involve our staff and make those relationship connections as well with our students. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the public comment I see. And Ms. Baden-Caswell, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, first I want to thank Jian. I mean, she's been working on this stuff for years now. The career pathways, particularly at the high school level, I think are critical for kids to be exposed to what does this career really mean? Not just how do I get background so that I can move towards it, but what does it mean? And I went to a presentation at Mountain View High School a couple of years ago, and their AVID program, some of the kids presented to me and some other folks as well. And they were talking about how they didn't know what people did in different careers. There was a young lady whose dad was a landscaper, and she was like, I didn't know what you did in office. And so these things are really important to expose our kids to early. I'm hoping that with our youngest kids, this is a smorgasbord, not a focus into a pathway thing. So we're just, you know, what does it mean to be a fireman? What does it mean to be a doctor? What does it mean to be a TV producer? Giving them lots of different information on what it is to do these jobs, and some projects. I like the projects, particularly in middle school, just kind of move you through some of these different careers. But I hope we don't track kids until they're ready to pick something they really think they're interested in.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a student's perspective on this as well, and just echo everyone's comments that these CTE classes are amazing. I've had the opportunity to take law and to take culinary arts, and I'm taking AAR, which is research, this year. And these are some of the greatest classes that I've had over the past 4 years. And I know talking with my friends in other school districts as well, they're often envious of the course selections that we have in Palo Alto. They're jealous of the great classes we have. And I know, like, I'm able to pursue my own research project in AAR, and that's super awesome. And other students in other districts don't have that opportunity. So just wanted to thank staff for all the work they've put in to make all these classes possible.
Thank you. Ms. DiBrienza.
Sounds a little redundant, but I want to thank Ms. Cho and the whole staff that, first of all, it's nice to talk about something besides COVID, even though we are all COVID all the time. There's other work still going on, and it's hard to make the time to get to it, but it's great to hear. I'm thrilled to see these expansions. As Ms. Steiner said, some of these programs are what makes kids want to come to school when they otherwise don't want to come to school, and also gives them ideas of, what their passions might be, what their interests might be, whether it's career ideas or just hobbies. And, it tends to be more experiential learning, which I think is always good. And I'd like to better understand at some point sort of that articulation between middle school to high school, right? Like how kids in middle school know about these options or what opportunities they get that are parallel, how they can connect. So kids, don't have to pick a lane early on, but just starting to get some of those hands-on experiences. And it's probably a lot of that is in Wheel. But I'm really thrilled to see this expansion. I think that our kids really benefit from it.
Thank you. I guess Mr. Darup wants to.
Yeah, I'll just pile on as well, only to say that, this is really, really fantastic. And it's just funny, I wanted to mention a couple meetings back, maybe last meeting, there was a comment, member of the public who commented and sort of impugned Dr. Austin's credentials based on where he got his doctorate. And to me, I mean, there wasn't something that stood in such sharp contrast as that to the sort of values that we place highly in our district. And the career theme pathways and other discussions we have about broadening career and college opportunities are really, to me, the sort of fundamental thing that we're trying to do in this district to change the culture of stress and the pressure cooker culture that we have been subject to for so long. So I just wanted to highlight that because I didn't comment on it last time, but this is the perfect opportunity to say, this agenda item is really, as Ms. DiBrienza likes to say, this is the work, and it's very, very it's rewarding to see this, and again, this is the kind of stuff that, COVID notwithstanding, I'm really proud to see our district focusing on.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Cho. This is a great update. Okay, on to our last staff report, which is item C, district communications. Dr. Austin.
All right. Mr. Drop, thank you for bringing up my graduate studies, which are still being referenced 20 years later and used by the Berkeley Law School, so it wasn't that big of a waste. Not that I took offense to that or anything. It's all right. It's fine. So let's move on to communications. Couple things. One of my responsibilities as your superintendent is to bring you recommendations that will position us for the best chance of success. And a couple things here. Anytime you give back stats on something, I know right away some people are going to say, oh, look, they're defensive. We're not defensive about anything. These are just stats. I asked Derek, Mr. Moore, for some statistics on our communication efforts, because as I look around this room, everyone in here has been the communications officer at one point or another through the last year at least. So in the last 90 days, we've sent out 1.2 million emails from our school district. The Backstage with the Superintendent series, which were a series of webinars on Mondays, have been viewed by our people here 14,500 times. And if you ever check YouTube statistics, the typical YouTube view for something of length is a couple minutes. And ours averaged 20 minutes and 57 seconds with an average audience of nearly 3,000. Our webpage, which by the way had to be built during the middle of a relaunch of our entire district website, but just the COVID webpage alone has 122,000 hits. And by the way, largely created by, the whole team, but Mr. Moore and I spent a lot of time on a whiteboard drawing it out as information changed. Let's Talk, which is a communication tool to be able to dialogue with staff, has had 2,500 dialogues with an average response time of 1.6 days and a back-end rating of an average score of a 9 out of a 10. That's pretty amazing. And then our Board of Education meetings have averaged 710 views since the closures, although tonight looks like we have dropped that trend. So clearly our agenda was not as exciting as some other nights. Now, what's not reflected here is the hundreds and hundreds of pages of communications that have gone out in documents like our reopening plan. But what will never be captured, and this is not an exaggeration, is 5 to 10 documents that are thrown away or revised so completely that they may as well not have existed in preparation for anything that's actually published. And the reason we spend so much time on those is because our documents are some of the most shared in the entire country. I receive calls from all over the country pretty much daily. Yesterday, 2 from superintendents in different cities that didn't know each other in Oregon. We have some of the most copied documents out there. In fact, when I was doing some research on this item, I called 2 public information officers for school districts. Both of them had the same reaction. They both laughed and said, "We copy your stuff." So the big stuff, the big published stuff, I guess we can be critical of, but it's literally some of the most copied stuff out there. Now, that aside, communication is always ranked as a top priority in a place people think is falling short for every organization. So let's just start there. But this district has had 2 public information officers, and neither one of them seemed to have ended especially well. And neither of the 2 seemed to have solved all of the issues that people wanted resolved. So getting back to my opening comments about trying to position us for better success, I'd like to know a whole lot more about what was going right and what possibly went wrong and what problem we're trying to solve before we jump in. And I'll tell you, my first reaction was, okay, fine, we'll bring back the public information officer. And I wrote a whole item about it, and I'm just giving you the back end story of it, and I hated the item. So when you hate what you just wrote, that means it's probably wrong. So what you see tonight is a recommendation that starts with a pause and then moves to, let's put together, this is my staff recommendation, you can do what you'd like to do here, but my recommendation would be that we put together a task force, limited time task force with a defined period of time. I've already asked Barbara Best to lead it from the staff place. She's been an active PTA parent. She runs our enrollment center and meets every single parent who comes through here. She also understands and watches what's happening with the operations of the district. And most importantly, she has zero agenda and has no problem telling us exactly what she and others think, even when it conflicts maybe with the direction we're going. It's one of the things I respect most about Barbara. I see some heads nodding. So that's my recommendation. And then my thought is we'd bring that back here, talk about it so that we're not solving the wrong problem. I had a superintendent who was a mentor of mine back when I was a principal who used to describe the phenomenon of nope, that's not it. And let's think about that for a second. Here's this thing I'd like you to do, and you go and you do it, and then somebody says, nope, that's not it. We wanted you to do this thing. I'm trying to avoid the nope, that's not it with this particular topic, and I think just slowing it down, but putting some real targeted thought behind it might get us to a better outcome. So I will stop.
Okay, thank you for that report and recommendation, and we'll now take public comment, and then we'll move to board members. And I see one hand up, and it's and here's another. So it looks like we'll still be with fewer than 10. And so we'll start with Jessica Clark, version 2. Go ahead, Ms. Clark.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I spoke.
Not a problem.
Before. I just want to say that the communication has been, I'm going to be polite, piss poor. And I'm speaking as a kindergarten aide who's been in the classroom for the last 2 days and also has a 5th grader with an IEP and 2 seniors at home who are learning by themselves. Well, my husband works at the county hospital with COVID patients, and I am in the classroom. I think it's really sad that I had to reach out to the board to ask them to come to my classroom on Thursday and Friday. It was really sad. And what they saw was, I'm sorry, I know there's some men on the board, but I work with strictly women in my classroom and on the campus. And they pretty much broke down to Jennifer DiBrienza. And these are people who are in crisis. We do our best. I don't care what pretty picture everyone is painting. Dawn, I know you said you went to Palo Verde. I've been in contact with the TK, 1st grade teacher, 2nd grade. You didn't talk to them. You didn't go in their classroom and you didn't ask them what was going on. I don't know, maybe you talked to the principal. But you guys, I know some of you have been going on campus. You got to like intervene hardcore with the kinder, TK, and 1st grade before you even think about going 2nd and 3rd, 4th and 5th. Our custodians are overburdened and we haven't even begun. Our classroom is not certified for whatever. We're supposed to have MERV 13. We have a portable unit in there. We are a new unit at Duvenac. And we have it in there because we don't feel safe. And they were supposed to come check us. We're day 2. We can't hear kids. Come to my classroom. I don't know, what you guys did. The teachers want you to come. And it baffles me because they're scared. And I make $20 an hour as an aide. I don't care. My life doesn't depend on this, but I'm going to speak up. And you guys got to get it right before you move forward. And I love you all. I know you're working hard. We're all working hard. But the communication is awful. And you guys got to show up and be in the classroom. I really want you to do that.
Thank you. We have one other speaker, and it is CSE President Meb Steiner.
Good evening, Meb Steiner, CSE President. Communication, yes, it is absolutely critical, always. It is very tough. And I do want to preface all of my comments by saying, and I've said this multiple times at very many meetings that I've been holding, but none of us know, how to do this. Every one of us is navigating a brand new situation. So I want to recognize that, and I want to thank everyone. We have put a ton of stuff on our principals. We've put a ton of stuff on our leadership team, on our teachers, our staff. Classified staff's been, working since the get-go in person. We're now, coming back, and there are some things to celebrate. But I want to echo the comments of, keeping up our vigilance again. The communication piece, I agree with Dr. Austin, there is a lot of information. You know, we've got websites, we've got YouTubes, we've got stuff that goes out, but not everyone actually has the time to kind of dig through and find stuff or actually review everything that's there. And I know a lot of people have been involved in participating in board meetings and certainly accessing our YouTube videos and going on the website. But it's still a lot of folks who are not getting that information, you know, in a sort of a quick and accessible way. I think there's also a difference of like, what is the information someone needs? You know, I think of working with my kids in SPED. I might think I have a great plan, but clearly I'm not getting through. So is it the child's fault or is it my fault? And I always want to take a step back and think, okay, how do I get this so that the student I'm working with is going to understand it and access this information? For me, I think what is a really, really critical piece, and I'm very happy to hear that there will be, you know, this work group that Ms. Hendricks and Ms. Baldwin will be putting together with the teachers. I really want to encourage us to include the voices of classified staff. It's just a very different perspective of the functioning of schools. You know, asking the aides who spend a lot of time with our kids in a lot of different environments would be really, really helpful. Our folks who are doing the maintenance, the landscape, the cleaning, our custodians. I mean, just getting them at a table to find out what's going on. They are busting out all their efforts. It's a huge, huge load. They did all the summer cleaning plus COVID prep and now the cleaning that'll happen on a daily basis. I think the critical piece of the communication is not just putting out the information, but making sure that it's being heard, and then also making sure that voice.
Oh, sorry there. Sorry there, Ms. Steiner. That was the 3-minute cutoff. And if you have additional comments, you can email them, of course. Okay, that was the last speaker. And then, so now we're on to board member questions and comments. I see your hand up, Mr. Brianza. I see your hand up, but we had the people on Zoom anticipated this moment, and so it'll be Mr. Dauber and then Ms. Bacon-Caswell first.
Dr. Austin, thanks for bringing this item. I've probably voted against a communications position certainly more than anybody else in the room, I can safely say. I've had more opportunities.
Yep.
So, but that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to it this time. And I wanted to briefly sort of recall what the issue was in the past, at least from my perspective, and what a good way forward would look like. In the past, my concern was that the goal of the public information officer or the PR person, which is what I think I preferred to call him at the time, was to burnish the district's image in the media and with stakeholders. And I think that the right goal for this role, which I think you've articulated here, is to communicate useful information effectively to stakeholders, both internal and external, you know, principally staff and parents, information that they can use, information that's presented in a way that is relevant and easily consumable. And I think the important thing for staff to think about as you craft this is how to make sure that we get the second without the first, and that we put some guardrails around this. I think it's tempting, at least this was my observation in the past, for a person occupying this role to sort of see his or her success in terms of, you know, are there positive stories in the paper? Are there negative stories in the paper? Or what are the papers editorializing? And you know, I think in order to counteract, that's very easy to observe, so it makes sense that people see that. I think part of what I will want to see is, what are your metrics for success, you know, that are not that? How are we going to measure effective communication and effective information flow so that we can make sure that we're, focusing this role in the right way. But given all of that, I will be very happy to support this because I think that this is a critical need. I definitely see and hear that, effective communication is something that we need to do well and do better at. So I will be supportive of the right proposal.
Ms. Baden-Caswell.
I am supportive of your suggestion, Don. I think that we have gone about this in a way that in the past where it hasn't worked, where we haven't figured out what the goal is before we bring somebody in to start talking to everybody. I have done communications for most of my career. And one of the things you learn pretty quickly is not everyone needs the same information. And so putting all the information together and flooding people doesn't help them absorb what they actually need. So I think we need to see where the gaps are and having a group come together to see what we need to fix and listen. I feel like we need a way to not just communicate to teachers and staff, but to have a two-way dialogue. I think that's true with parents as well, but I think what we've heard a lot of over the last several months is how much the teachers and staff really need that. And I don't want to presuppose what your task force is going to solve. I'm just saying that's one area that I think we are challenged. Because we have not been good at this, even though we've put out reams of information, we haven't satisfied the people that are looking for the right information at the right time, easy to find when they can't remember where it was. It would be really helpful, I think, to reach out to some other school districts that are doing this in a more successful way. Likely they're not in California, but maybe there are some. And maybe bring in a couple of people from outside if they're willing to be part of this effort. I think we also should think about having a facilitator that has no skin in the game. So somebody that doesn't have a pre-existing belief about where we are, so that we really are looking at what the issues are and solving those issues. So, but again, I think this is the way to do it. I think we have to slow down. One person writing press releases is not what we need right now. So I do think this is a good path forward. And I thank you for being willing to come forward and say, I don't have the answer yet, but I want to make sure we're solving the right problem.
Great, thank you. Mr. Brianza and then Mr. Darrow.
Thanks. I'm fine with a task force. I don't care how we move ahead right now, but obviously doing something is what's important. I think the idea that we would, we regularly communicate with over 30,000 people, right? When you look at parents, staff, teachers and other staff, students, the community, the press. I mean, there's so many stakeholders and they need different information. They're interested in different information. They have different appetites for detail. There are different languages needed. We have different sort of sub-communities, right? Our special ed community needs extra communication. There's more details. There's more info maybe that they need. So I wouldn't expect that any of us any of the educators in the room, any of the board members would necessarily know how to effectively get everyone the information that they need in the way that they need it without it being overwhelming or confusing or lost. So I think probably a comms person, yes, not a PR person, but a comms person is needed, but I'm happy to have this task force be an investigation into what is it that we really need. Like you said, identifying the problem before we try to solve it sounds totally reasonable to me. I want to make sure that all of our staff, all of our educators and our staff members are doing their job, which of course part of that is figuring out how to communicate what you're doing. But when so many people are spending so much time trying to compile communications, you're not getting to do the things that we hired you to do. And that's what I want to happen too. So I want to thank Mr. Dauber for coming around and evolving his thinking over time on this issue. I always like it when we have that growth mindset. And I look forward to hearing pretty soon what the task force comes up with, and hopefully we'll have all of those stakeholders on that task force in some way. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Darrell.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo my colleagues. Communication is sort of like transparency in that it's a word that they're both really important, but they mean different things to different people. And so just, I mean, my perspective for you, Dr. Austin, as you do this task force, which I also support, is, you know, from what I've seen, the issue with communication isn't that we don't communicate enough or that we don't do a good job of getting information out there. I think a lot of times what happens is at the district office level, there's a presumption about what it is, the information that certain individuals need, right? Whether it's staff, whether it's teachers, whether it's principals, whether it's stakeholders, other stakeholders like parents. You know, we have an idea here about certain things, and we try and get that information out to you. Try and get that information out to the people who need it, at least based on what you believe. And then there's sometimes a disconnect between what the information people want and the information that we believe that they want. And a thing that I've seen that highlights this is really around safety, and it's interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with Ms. Chow and other folks about ventilation, for example, right? And so I know I have been very confident in our HVAC systems, in our MERV 13s, in our filters, and the information is there, but there are folks at the staff, I mean, at the site level, staff and teachers who aren't getting, I mean, they don't have the same breadth of knowledge or depth of knowledge on what exactly these systems do and how they protect us. And so even though the information is getting there about the systems, the context isn't there. And so what's being lost is the assurance that we have of safety. While the bare facts are getting passed down, that feeling of safety and assurance of safety isn't. And that's not something I think can be fixed with providing more information or less. It's more of a framing issue. And that's why I think it's so important to do this, to figure out exactly how it is we get information to different folks who need it, not just different information, but information in different ways. And my last point is, you know, you identified reasonable expectations and reporting structure. Another place I've seen communication breakdowns is really granular tasks or issues that wouldn't be within the province of, you know, an email from you to everybody. But for example, a front office staff member asking about who exactly is doing the screening of, you know, these kids. And obviously that's something that principals are dealing with at the site level, but that's because they get a piece of the larger puzzle that we have, that we're getting from the county. I mean, you know, there are all these information that gets broken down, and at a certain point, I think there's a little bit of a feeling maybe from the site level that, you know, that's information we're waiting on from the district, and at the district, we're saying that's information that the principals are getting to staff, and it eventually gets sorted out. But I think the question is, do staff and parents too, I mean, do they know the right people to talk to, and is there a clear chain of information? So the context and how we frame the information, and then the clear chain of how the information comes down to the individuals who need it are both things that you've identified in this task force that you're going to go to, but that's sort of my, what I see as the two most important things.
Great. I'm supportive of this approach, so, and thank you for not pushing ahead with the obvious but probably wrong solution. And I will say I have also voted against a PIO in the past, and I'm glad that I did, because that PIO wouldn't be solving the problem that we have today. And frankly, my 2 cents, I mean, the task force and you will figure out what you think is right. I think we have at least as much an issue internally as we do with external communications, maybe more. And that's generally not the realm of a PIO. And I think, you know, taking out a clean sheet of paper and thinking about what is this problem actually, and how do we craft a solution that works for us? I don't think we want to just plug and play with other people's, you know, org charts and just fill the box and check it off the list. This is a foundational thing that goes to the strength and ability of our district to actually accomplish our long-term goals. And so I think it's well worth spending a couple months and getting good people working on it to come up with something that really works for us. So thank you, and it sounds like you've got general support for this approach. Board does need to take action. Mr. Brienza, were you anticipating action on this? No. This is something you requested, right?
Unless you weren't planning on starting that task force anytime soon. Great, no action.
Okay, all right, great. Oh God, I gotta pull the mic down. Okay, so that is it for staff reports. The remaining item is information items. There's no formal report to refresh everybody because we haven't done these in a while. There are no formal reports on this item, and we'll take comment on them either from the community or from board members by people raising their hands on them. And I've seen, so if you're a community member and you'd like to speak to one of the information items, now is the time to raise your hand. I've already polled the board members, and we're going to talk to A and B. If anybody wants to talk to any other items in addition to A and B, let me know now so we can just put it in the queue. Is it just A and B? Okay, so let's talk about item A. And let's see if there's any community comment. Item A is update on student progress for the 2019-20 school year. And I'm not seeing any community comments, so we'll go to board members. And first up is Ms. Baden-Caswell.
Yeah, so I feel like this and B are very closely related. And what I was hoping is that we could have some thoughtful statement, or more than statement, from staff as to what do we really need to do here? How can PAUSD Plus help us with this? Just looking at these reports, I just don't feel like we've made enough progress. And when we go into the A to G, I'm going to say the same thing. I mean, we can count the kids. We know what classes they seem to be having problems with. How do we address it differently? Doing it the same way but harder doesn't seem to be a successful solution. So that's just, I would like to hear from maybe Ms. Ofak or Ms. Lawrence, their thoughts on this.
Yeah, why don't we see if there are there other comments or questions? Ooh, feedback. Are there other comments or questions on this that we can put in the hopper?
I guess it's more of a comment. What just struck me was it's just so different, right? That we're comparing apples to oranges in so many ways that I don't know that it's useful, and not because you gave us the wrong data, but just because the data are different, right? So it could be, hey, great, fewer kids got a no credit, but is that because that was really just Fs, not DFs? Or is that because we tried to be really supportive and make sure, like made it easy on kids? Like there's just no way to tell. So as much as I think we have to keep, bringing the data forward, I just think that this past spring is an anomaly and it's hard to compare.
Let me echo and just slightly build on Mr. Brienza's comment, which I completely agree with. You're obliged to bring this report forward. We asked for the DF report. I think it's one of the great innovations in reporting that we've had the last year or two. But this is a particularly uninformative one. The only thing I thought I could learn from it was if we had a significant increase in kids who were getting no credit versus the number that were getting Ds and Fs before, which we had asked about in the spring and we'd gotten the answer. And so to me, this confirms in the report style the answer that we got in the spring, which was that no, we had actually worked very hard not to derail students' careers based on the emergency learning in the spring, and it looks like that was the result that we got. So my reaction is that kind of checks the box on what I was looking for from this report, and I wasn't sure that it carried a lot of information otherwise. So, but maybe you want to respond to Ms. Baden-Caswell's point.
Would it be okay with the board if I also combined A and B? Because I agree that they are close enough. I could probably address them both at the same time.
Why don't you give it a try?
All right, let me take the first shot at it. I've had all the conversations with everybody, and I will probably be more unfiltered. So let's just go unfiltered because it's almost 10. Our, gosh dang it, a year ago, we put in place the DNF report. Why? Because it's really powerful. In fact, I think as a district, we have overvalued some of the wrong things. And I think that's one that I was super excited about because I think it's one of the right things. And while it paralleled the disproportionality of students that are disproportionate, a number of students in certain groups that, again, performed poorly, I think the DNF report just has so many ramifications, super powerful. Until we were shut down for closures. Now, the good news is we went to credit, no credit. And I know not everyone loved that. But I also know that across the state, there is a giant records request for an eventual lawsuit on Ds and Fs at the final grades of last year. And I was just contacted on that because we didn't have that situation, okay? Our move to credit, no credit was an attempt to protect students at a time of uncertainty. And if I say anything about this report, I would say that worked. So if our primary goal at the time of that decision was to protect kids from getting unfairly hit with a D or an F or even a no credit, we can make a whole bunch of assumptions about how and why that occurred the way it did, but I'd say plant a tiny victory flag on that one, that we did not make it worse by giving grades and having a huge number of Ds and Fs. So thank you to everyone for however you got there, we got there. So I would say that this report, as far as a trend report, which is what we're trying to get in the habit of, is trend reports, probably pretty meaningless. As far as did it accomplish the stated goal at the time? Yes, it did. On B, the A through G, now this is a place I am excited about. For years and years, this district has struggled with bad data. So much so that the district wasted their time even reviewing it because it was inaccurate. Then we solved the accuracy issue. And this was going to be the year with the big push for, and now what? And we have assigned Ms. Lawrence, our Director of Secondary Ed, that didn't exist last year, along with Mr. Krolikowski, our new director, to work hand in hand with our counselors, not in just making sure our data is accurate, but routine and systematic ways to meet with students along the ways to impact the results. Now, that sounds like we're way behind, and we are behind, because you should not have had to spend years and years trying to get clean data. But you did, and that's where we're at. But now we have two people totally invested who are met with and are meeting with the counselors and the site principals. You have site principals now, and every principal, when you take over, you have an opportunity to look at a different area to focus on than the person before. And that's a benefit of a transition point. And then hopefully after that transition point, we have some stability, which will also be super nice. But with Ms. Lawrence's guidance and being at both schools, and with Mr. Krolikowski, who's an experienced high school principal, and then you bring in Wendy Stratton, who is already in our system and is detail-oriented, and Mr. Klein, who had 17 years of high school experience, we have never been positioned better to impact these results. So now we just have to do it, right? So it is an area of emphasis, and we have the right people in the right spots with the right mentors and the right experience levels. So I expect some really significant improvements in this area. So that's my best shot at A and B.
Okay, so let's make sure that we got everybody's comments on B, which is the A to G reporting update, as well as A. Anybody want to talk to B who didn't already talk to A? Okay, looks like we got everybody's best shot. Ms. Baden-Caswell, did you get your question addressed, or did you want to drill down further?
So I really appreciate everything, Dr. Austin, that you said. I think we need to move from planning mode to execution. And I'm concerned that the part of our issue may be bad classifications or the wrong classifications, particularly for English language learners. But we know each one of these kids, and I feel like we need to do a kid by kid. And we don't want a kid by kid reported at the board meeting, obviously. But I'd like to know that we did kid by kid and we have 70% of the kids, this was the problem, and this is what is going to be done this year. Because I won't be on the board next year when this report comes out, but I certainly will be sitting in the audience. And I'm just hoping that we will have handheld. I mean, we have this opportunity with a lot of these students being in PAUSD Plus, and maybe that can be the crossover opportunity.
Spade and Caswell, I appreciate your comments. I know Ms. Lawrence, Mr. Kolakowski, both of our principals are all watching tonight, and they've all heard that as well. So I think we're all on the same page.
Okay, Mr. Dauber, is your hand up again?
Yes, I just wanted to underline this point as well. It seems to me that A to G completion rates are something that is more in our control than other kinds of outcomes, in the sense that I think there's many points where the district could intervene to support students who have gone off track or look like they're going off track, rather than at the end just recording the fact of whether students performed or not. I'm not suggesting that the latter is happening. I'm sure that counselors are engaged, but I do think that it's really important to manage to this outcome. I'm really heartened, Dr. Austin, to hear you predict that we're going to see an improvement in this number when we next look at it, and I'm looking forward to seeing that bear out in the actual results. Thanks.
The one piece of very practical advice that I'd like to add to that is, I mean, that does sound like a great team to have focused on it. It is my experience that when there needs to be some person clearly responsible. It is not good. Collective responsibility is, even among very good players, is sometimes, oops, sorry, I thought you had that. So luckily we have you to hold accountable, but I think you might want to have somebody to hold accountable underneath you as well.
I would like to delegate that accountability. Right now, Ms. Lawrence is listening, and this is in her wheelhouse.
Great. Great. Anything else on A and B? Okay, I did not see any other requests for any other items. Does anybody want to speak to any of the other items? Okay, if not, we'll move on to board operations. Anybody for board operations? Ms. Beaton-Caswell, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the electronic
No problem.
page. Just two things that I'm going to the SF squared meeting tomorrow, Schools for Strong Finance, and whatever they hand out, I will bring back. But I think being up to date on how basic aid districts need to be looking at the financial picture for the state is pretty important for us. I also will be going to the next Cal SSD meeting, same thing. So just want to let you know.
Even more useful than usual because there's so much going on. Mr. Dauber, I see your hand up.
Thanks. I have a item that I'd like to see appear on a future board agenda. This stems from some work that our students have been doing in the area of Title IX. Some of you might have seen coverage of a protest that was led by one of our students and populated by a number of them in front of Supervisor Simidian's house I guess on the weekend. And the specific issue there was that the Board of Supervisors failed to forward an audit of the Title IX policies in the county, and that failed on Supervisor Simitian's failure to vote yes, which I think he was wrong to take the position he did, but that's neither here nor there. But it did concern me that our students felt strongly enough about this issue and about the experiences that they're having that they, went first to the Board of Supervisors and then, took this protest action. So what I would like to do is to propose that we do a study session, not quite the study that Supervisor Simitian killed at the county level, but a study session of our own to hear from students about their experience with Title IX. Mr. Drop and I have been hearing a little bit in the BPRC, but clearly there is an opportunity here for some communication. And this is a topic, obviously, that we've had a lot of experience with in the past, and I think it would be well worth our taking the time to hear from students, satisfy ourselves that we're moving in the right direction, give staff an opportunity to do the same. And to do that in the context of a study session, I think would make for a more free exchange than we can have in a typical board meeting, maybe with a little bit less time pressure.
Okay. Since it's not agendized, obviously we can't discuss the topic, but I'm certainly supportive of that. I remember, and I'm sure we all remember, there was a meeting probably 9 months ago or so, some number, maybe before we went into COVID, where a number of students came to one of our meetings and talked to the Title IX report and shared some of their experiences. And I assume that group overlaps maybe with some of the groups, some of the people that you're identifying. And I think are having a session for those people to talk freely and share their views and to have staff engaged so they can also participate and both understand and share their sense of what's going on, I think sounds like a pretty productive undertaking to me. So we'll take it up in agenda setting. All right, other items.
Just that I think a lot of us have been to schools in the past week, and it was just great to be at school sites. It was great to hear teachers and staff, to see kids, to see it happening. It was, I think, really good. So I'm glad that we are taking this slow-phased approach and that we're making sure everything's in place as we go step by step. But it's nice progress.
Amen to that. And I'll just add, because it didn't come up much during the meeting, but you hit on right now, Mr. Brianza. It's like, I think it was a very smart implementation move to do the rollout as slowly as we are doing it. I think there are other districts that are going faster. New York City, I noticed, did all elementary schools on Monday and all secondary schools on Wednesday. And it really struck me the contrast between their approach and ours. And I know I felt great comfort going to schools this week and seeing 20, 30, 40 kids in an entire campus, and knowing that we had 2 weeks to get things square with that group before the next group even set foot on campus. And I think it gave us all a chance, a rare chance these days, to breathe and kind of understand that, make sure we were doing things right before we took the next step. So thank you for mentioning that, because I felt the same. All right, Mr. Drop, anything? Okay. All right, that being our last agenda item, we are adjourned.